pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I move to approve the order of the agenda with the modification of moving item 7A to the end after case number WS-11-01.
Second.
Okay, can we have a vote?
And that motion passes 5-0.
All right.
I move for approval of the minutes of the March 17th, 2011 meeting.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, let's vote.
Okay, and that motion passes with Commissioner Gildner abstaining.
All right. Now on the agenda is the time for the public forum. This is the time for any person to speak on any subject not appearing on the agenda. I should just mention the Cabela's work here is on the agenda, so if you're here to speak on that matter, please wait until that case is heard. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on anything not on the agenda? No one has signed up. Okay. We'll move to the next item, the public hearing. First case number WZ1101, the addendum to the original publication. An application filed by Cabela's Retail, Inc., Coors Brewing Company in Jefferson County for approval of zoning for right-of-way being annexed into the city by case number ANX-11-01. Staff?
Before I begin, I'm wondering if you want the lights turned down, if we've got somebody back in the... Okay. Sounds like... Okay.
Excuse me.
For the record, Meredith Record, Wheat Ridge Community Development Department. This item that we've got before you as first on the agenda is somewhat of a housekeeping item based on what we did on the March 17th meeting. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. As you'll recall, case number WZ11-01 was a request for approval of planned commercial development zoning on property being considered for annexation into the city. And Planning Commission heard that and recommended approval. Subsequent to the staff report being prepared and distributed, it came to our attention that not all of the annexation piece, which is in this area right here, is going to be incorporated into the ODP. A portion of it, and this is a better picture of this, is a piece of CDOT right-of-way that obviously is not going to be desired for developability and not included in the proposed PCD, and we do need to assign zoning on it, and staff is recommending A1. The rest of the I-70 corridor right-of-way is zoned A1, and so we feel it's appropriate. When we found out about this, we did somewhat of an emergency publication, so Planning Commission does have jurisdiction to hear this, and it would be incorporated into the City Council action on April 25th. So all we need is a simple motion, and I'd be happy to answer questions if there are any.
Any questions for Meredith? Okay. Thank you for your presentation. I'd entertain a motion.
I move to recommend approval of A1 zoning on a 2.7 acre parcel owned by CDOT located north of 4105 Youngfield Service Road for the following reasons. 1, the parcel located is under consideration for annexation and zoning must be approved within 90 days. 2, the parcel is used for right-of-way purposes and is not being incorporated into the Clear Creek Crossing development. And 3, other right-of-way in the I-70 corridor is zoned A1.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, let's call for a vote.
And that motion passes 5-0.
All right, next item. Case number WZ-11-02, continued from March 17th, 2011. An application filed by Cabela's Retail, Inc., Coors Brewing Company, and Jefferson County for approval of a specific outline development plan for property zoned planned commercial development and located at 4000 Cabela Drive and 4105 Youngfield Service Road. Do we have a staff report?
And again, for the record, Meredith Reckert, Wheat Ridge Community Development Department. And before I get started with my presentation, we're hoping that we have a PowerPoint presentation. There we go. Before I get started, I'd like to introduce my colleagues at the staff tables. We've got Tim Peranto at the back table. Of course, he is Director of Public Works, and he is very well versed in the traffic situation with the development. Also at the front table is Ken Johnstone, who is the Community Development Director, and I think he'd like to say a few words before we get started.
Thanks, Meredith. I just wanted to real briefly follow up on some of the public testimony and questions that occurred at the concept ODP hearing that occurred back in March. There were a lot of very interested parties concerned about the traffic improvements in the area, which is a critical issue with this development, as the Commission is well aware. And I really just wanted to offer some assurances to the Commission. While it's not really part of the hearing tonight, it was really part of the consideration at the concept ODP that the previous approvals that were related to the environmental assessment, the federal approval process whereby all the traffic improvements to State Highway 58 and I-70, Cabela Drive, the various interchange improvements, that all those commitments are fully in force and will be fully implemented as part of the improvements, and a series of those are required prior to any buildings being occupied in this development, and those commitments are fully in place. The traffic study that was reviewed as part of that concept ODP, as was discussed at the hearing as well, demonstrated that the capacity improvements that are being constructed as part of this development project will fully accommodate this new development scenario, which is, again, slightly modified from the previous ODP approval. So really just wanted to follow up. It's not specifically something that we're talking about tonight, but just wanted to assure the Commission that those commitments will be met.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Okay. Case number WZ11-02 is a request for approval of a specific outline development plan. Location of the request, 4000 Cabela Drive and 4105 Youngfield Service Road, more specifically. Block 1, lots 1 and 3, Block 2, lot 1, Block 3 of lot, lot 1, Block 3, lot 1, Block 4, lot 1, Block 5, lots 3, 4, and 5 of the Clear Creek Crossing subdivision. That is a subsequent review we're having tonight, but we wanted to get the more specific legal description on record. The present zoning on the property is planned commercial development, plan development, and agricultural 1. The comprehensive plan does designate the property as regional, commercial, and open space. I would like to enter into the record the comprehensive plan, the zoning ordinance, the case file and packet materials, and the contents of this digital presentation. The property is within the city of Wheat Ridge, and all of the appropriate posting and notification requirements have been met. Therefore, Commission does have jurisdiction to hear this case. So we're looking at the overhead, and on it is the property under consideration. It is outlined with a red denotation. Again, this request is for approval of a planned commercial development specific outline development plan. It was originally scheduled for Planning Commission public hearing at March 17th, however, was continued upon recommendation at staff, and there was no discussion at that point. However, at the March 17th meeting, Planning Commission did look at case number WZ11-01, which was a request for approval of zoning on the proposed annexation parcel and inclusion in it with the Clear Creek Crossing concept ODP plan. And a recommendation of approval was made by the Commission with conditions for all of that portion of the property. The annexation case, as well as the concept ODP and the specific ODP, are going to public hearing in front of City Council on April 25th with the subdivision plat, followed up on May 9th. And of course, the Planning Commission is giving a recommendation for City Council to consider as part of the evidence for that case. So some of this will look a little bit redundant because some of the slides are the same as we looked at March 17th, so just bear with me on that as I move through the presentation. The land under ODP consideration includes several parcels with multiple ownership. On the map we're seeing on the slide, the yellow portion designates the Cabela ownership. The blue in this area and down here is Coors owned property, and the pinkish colored is currently under ownership of Jefferson County, which is the annexation piece. The county parcel is roughly 32 acres in size, and it is under contract for purchase by Cabela's and Longs Peak Metro District. It previously contained the Table Mountain Animal Center, which was recently demolished and is zoned plan development. The remainder of the property is located within the city of Wheat Ridge, is about 174 acres, is zoned PCD, and it was annexed in the 2005 timeframe. It is currently vacant with the 28-acre water storage facility at the southwest corner, and you can see that in this location on this slide. As Ken indicated, there was a lot of discussion at that March 17th Planning Commission meeting related to the traffic impacts to the area, which will occur because of the Clear Creek Crossing development. As he indicated, there was an original environmental assessment which was undertaken and previously approved and obligates that certain traffic improvements be completed prior to the issuance of the first CO for the project. On the overhead tonight, you can see in pink some of those traffic improvements, some of which have already been completed and some of which will have to occur before the first CO that has been issued. The improvements that have been completed include the widening improvement of Youngfield Street, construction of West 40th Avenue from Youngfield under I-70, also the relocation of a portion of the Clear Creek Greenbelt. There's also been some improvements incurred by the state for interchange movements between State Highway 58 and I-70. There are still, as we indicated earlier, some other improvements that need to occur. Obviously, there are the on-site improvements, which include Cabela Drive as it runs through the development, its connection, and the construction of the new interchange with Highway 58, the connection up to 44th Avenue, construction of some of the new hook ramps for 32nd Avenue, some reconstruction of the 32nd Avenue as it goes under the freeway, and then some pedestrian improvements further to the west of the project in unincorporated Jefferson County. The one piece that's shown on the drawing that we're looking at tonight is the hook ramps, which are going to be reconstructed at 27th Avenue. That will be a future project and undertaken by CDOT. So some slides from the property. Again, these are redundant from the last hearing, but just bear with me. This first slide is taken from Youngfield Street, looking west at the 40th Avenue underpass. Here I am standing on the portion of the Clear Creek, or the piece of trail that connects with the Clear Creek Greenbelt adjacent to I-70. Over on the left-hand side are some of the improvements from what was once the Table Mountain Animal Center. Now I'm looking the other direction, still on that pathway, and Youngfield Service Road, and again off to the right are some of the demo from the animal shelter. Now I'm looking southwest. This is the approximate alignment of 40th Avenue and is used as construction for the dirt hauling and so on and so forth. Now I'm looking south at the Youngfield Service Road. This structure in the distance is the La Quinta Hotel. Looking southwest, you can see some of the nearby single-family development on the left-hand side of the screen. looking west, and then looking north along the existing frontage road for Youngfield towards 40th Avenue. Finally, I'm standing on Youngfield Service Road, just north of 32nd Avenue. The La Quinta is over here on the right-hand side, looking at the location of where the connection of Cabela Drive will occur. And now, finally, looking south, 32nd Avenue lights with Youngfield Service Road. This slide is actually the third page of the ODP that was reviewed, the concept ODP that was reviewed by Planning Commission on March 17th. And it's going to look a little bit different, let me back up a second. Where the concept ODP was very general in nature and showed kind of it established the allowed uses, the development standards, and showed the road layout with access points. The specific outline plan will do a better job of defining what the site layout and architecture are for those particular pad sites. Should the specific ODP be approved prior to building construction, an administrative FDP would be required for the individual structures. And I would note that the FDP would have to be consistent and include specific site landscaping, parking lot landscaping, landscape connections, and lighting for each building. This was another portion of the approval by Planning Commission on March 17th. In addition to the concept ODP, there was what we're calling an accompanying design standards pattern book. And again, it was intended that these two documents work together to try to dictate the design within the development. And any future approvals, of course, will have to comply with both of those documents, the concept ODP for the design standards for setbacks and uses, and then the pattern book, which addressed things like streetscape improvements, architecture, and signage. I would note also that when you look at your plan, the specific ODP, you'll see pieces that say not a part of this development or not a part of this approval. Those pieces, if and when they come in for construction, we'll have to go through this process and have a specific ODP approved for them as well. Okay, this is the first sheet of the plan set. I like to call this the declaration page. It shows in the key map the parcels that we're looking at tonight up in the center section right in here. It contains legal descriptions and title blocks and places for people to sign. This is the second page of the ODP. And again, one of the requirements of a specific ODP is that there be provided some aerial perspective showing sort of in 3D format what the proposed massing and site development will be like. This particular page has three different perspectives from a couple different vantage points, and then does include more of a close-up perspective of the Cabela's store. The first piece of the specific ODP is the Cabela store. They're proposing a 130,000 square foot building. It is located at the northeast corner of the parcel. So let me help you get oriented here. We've got Clear Creek up here at the north. This is I-70 with Youngfield beyond, and then 32nd Avenue down here. So north is to the left-hand side. The proposed structure is pushed up to that northeast corner of the property, and due to the incorporation of the TMAC parcel, it backs up to the Clear Creek corridor, which is shown in this location right along here. There's boat display included on the eastern side of the building. On the western side of the building, we've got some RV parking available and also an RV dumping station. There are screened loading areas right in this location, which is the northwest corner of the building. And due to the proximity of the Clear Creek Greenbelt, staff does have a little bit of concern about what that's going to look like. And so we are giving a recommendation that there be extensive landscaping installed in that area to help buffer the back of the building from the Greenbelt. Now, the primary access from the Cabela's is from 40th Avenue. 40th Avenue runs down to the south right in this location. This is that primary access drive, which is a landscaped entrance feature. An additional access drive will occur from Cabela's to the Cabela Drive to the west, and it's not shown on on this specific plan. Staff, again, would like to see some design detail on that based on the fact that that, again, is going to be one of the primary entrances into the development, and we want to make sure it is properly designed and appears appropriately and not just as a back door behind somebody's service area. One comment from Public Works is they would also like to see the engineered design of that western entrance to ensure the functionality of that piece of it. As far as landscape coverage on the property, we're showing about 25%. Parking does exceed the minimum number of spaces, and staff would know that we'd like to see bike parking areas designated on the site plan. I am moving through this pretty quickly because I believe the applicant intends on doing a more lengthy discussion. So there will be more opportunities for discussion later on. These are the elevations for the Cabela's store, the top one being the front entrance, which would be the south side. The structure is proposed to be right about 46 feet in height and would include architectural materials, including cultured stone, stucco, and wooden siding. I would point out that the elevations do meet the standards outlined in the design pattern book for use of materials, identifying themes, facade articulation, and transparency. They've also included a detail of what the front entryway will look like. Again, the requirements for that as far as sidewalk width and features along that entryway were dictated by the pattern book, and they do meet those requirements. The second piece we're looking at is lot 5.1. A Walmart store is being proposed for this, which is to be about 177,000 square feet in size. This time, north is to the top of the page with Cabela Drive running in this location. 32nd Avenue would be down here quite a bit farther to the south, with I-70 over in this location. The structure is proposed to be pushed to the south of the lot with parking fields and landscaping to the north. They're showing about 18% landscaping and 2 curb cuts to Cabela Drive. Those would both be signalized at this location and a little bit further to the north at this location. This is part of the elevations for the Walmart store. This one on the top is the northern elevation, which is the front of the structure. Again, they've provided a detail of that, the landscaping and pedestrian improvements along that front facade. Architectural materials on the front and east facades of the structure, which are the more easily viewable, include cultured stone, integrally colored CMU, ephes, and brick. The facades, which are less visible, which include the side along the western property line and also the side along the south, are comprised of varying types of CMU. And while it does appear that they meet the standards for use of different materials, we would like to see an analysis of those other points within the design standards book that need to be met, including the building articulation, the unifying elements, transparency, and so on. So this is one of the other facade elevations. I believe this one is the facade to the south, which is up against the bluff, and this is the east elevation viewable from Cabela Drive. At the last meeting, there was quite a bit of concern expressed from folks in the audience about the transition between the back of the Cabela's property and that neighborhood to the southwest. And because of that, we asked for some additional information. They did provide a couple of sections showing the relationship of the building, the proposed elevations. On this top one, you can see the existing Walmart building with the service area, and this would be the approximate location of Cabela Drive in relationship to the building. This one below is intended to show the difference between the elevation if I can find my cursor, there we go, of the Cabela store with that adjacent bluff on the south side. In addition to the building kind of being tucked back into the bluff, they also will be required to do some improvements for screening, including fencing and landscaping. And again, those requirements are addressed in the design pattern book and will have to be met. Okay, this page, I believe it's page 6 of the plan set, has kind of a lot going on. This is proposed to be the layout for what we're calling the mini anchors and the shops, and it includes lots 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, lot 3, and lots 5.2 and 5.3. So first of all, we're looking at lot 2.1, which is one of the shops areas. They are showing access to the public road that runs adjacent to it and connects Cabela Drive with 40th. This street is going to be called Clear Creek Drive. The parcels 2.3 and 2.4 are located down to the south a little bit on Cabela Drive. They're going to share an access point to Cabela Drive. For the three combined subparcels, we're showing about 39,000 square feet of floor area, landscape coverage right at about 47%. And I would point out all the buildings within these particular pad areas are limited to 35 feet in height. Also, parking, the parking counts they've provided show that they do meet the standards in the ODP for retail uses. Parcel 3, which is the furthest south piece, is showing about 20,000 square feet of area with landscape coverage at 36%. Again, uses and the height of the structure are dictated by the concept ODP, and the parking does exceed the requirement for both retail and restaurant uses. Lots 5.2 and 5.3 are located here's the existing Walmart building. They're located a little bit to the north and northwest of that. Those combined parcels are showing about 26,000 square feet, landscaping at 39%, and again, the building height is consistent with the others in this area at 35 feet, and they also meet the parking standards. Lot 2.2, which is the building that's shown pushed up against the I-70 frontage road, has been indicated as having the mini or junior anchors within the development. And again, we don't have any specific uses, but it's generally intended that these are larger format retail with about 25,000 square feet of tenant space. Again, they're pushed up against I-70 with the entrance and the front facade facing to the west with the parking and landscaping and pedestrian connections in that location. About 81,000 square feet, 12.7% landscape coverage. Staff was a little bit concerned because of the loading area adjacent to I-70, what those views might potentially be to folks traveling on I-70. And so they did provide a section showing how the landscaping and buffering will occur. Again, this is the back of the building with the loading area and the view from I-70. A little closer detail of this shows, again, we're looking now from a bird's eye view, I-70, the backs of the buildings with the loading area, and here they're showing a 15-foot wide landscape strip with shrubs and small trees. Also the same treatment over adjacent to 40th Avenue. It gets a little tight over in this 40th Avenue area. We would like to ensure that there is adequate buffering there, and so would like at least some language included on the specific ODP to ensure that. Okay. These are the elevations for the shops, and again, those were the smaller building pads you saw in the previous documents. Architectural materials include brick, stone, and ephes. Again, the elevations do appear to meet the requirements for facade articulation, transparency, and use of unifying elements. We would like to see that analysis included on the sheet to make sure that they do meet the standards in the pattern book. These are the elevations for what we're calling the mini or the junior anchors. Again, they're using stone, brick, and ephes. One of the comments that staff did have is that on each of the elevations they're showing painted concrete up in this location up here along the facade treatments. And that is not one of the recognized materials in the pattern book, and so I think that there will probably be some discussion with the applicant about how they see that being used. Again, it looks like they do meet the standards in the pattern book, but again, we'd like to have that analysis included on the page prior to City Council. Okay, we're back to aerial photo of the property. There was a neighborhood meeting held on February 25th of 2010. There were about 35 participants who came to the meeting. With this application, we did do our standard 15-day referral. All agencies responding can serve the property with improvements installed. Public Works did review a traffic study and has concluded that the new and improved roadway network can support the development. And finally, they are requesting that engineer design for the westerly entrance into the Cabela's site to verify the functionality. As Commission is aware, anytime we go through an ODP process, we do have to take a look at the evaluation criteria that's laid out in, I believe, Section 112. I believe it's 112 of the zoning and development guidelines. And when we went through the concept ODP on March 17th, I addressed that pretty specifically. I would like to point out that we have concluded that they do meet that criteria based on the following items: that there's a change condition due to further commercialization in the area, that the proposal is compatible with zoning and land use to the east, north, and south, that there's consistency with the comprehensive plan and the appropriate addendums, and that finally there will be recreational, physical, and economic benefits. Staff would like to reiterate that, again, we feel this component of the application does still comply with those criteria evaluation. In addition to the criteria that we use to evaluate, we've also drawn some other conclusions. The proposed traffic infrastructure improvements can accommodate the development based on what's being proposed and the revised traffic information. All requirements for a planned commercial development specific ODP have been met, and that the proposed specific ODP is consistent with the concept ODP and the design standards pattern book. For these reasons, we are giving a recommendation of approval. We have attached 10 conditions which have been specifically outlined in your recommended motions, and that would conclude the staff comments.
Great. Thank you, Meredith.
Sure.
Let's see. Do we usually do questions of staff and then do the applicant? Do we have questions? Anybody have questions for staff before we proceed to the applicant's presentation? Okay.
Thank you, Meredith. I had a question actually on the concern of staff on the north side of Lot 1, the call for extensive landscaping in order to screen the backside.
Right.
Has that in discussions been further defined or anything specific?
Well, we haven't really come to any specific conclusions. We do know that they intend to make it an amenity. And have agreed to work. I was just trying to go to that slide. So it'd be right in this area. They have indicated that they'd like to make it an amenity as part of the development and have agreed to work with our parks and naturalists to come up with a design that is appropriate for that area.
And is it Public Works then who has jurisdiction over the detention area?
Yes.
Thanks.
Meredith, I noticed on this page 3, the water quality pond is now located within that lot 1.1 area. When we looked at the case in our last session, the water quality pond was indicated as being on the western.
So down in this.
Yeah, the
area.
western section, more adjacent to Cabela Drive. And I noticed when I was reviewing this that location seems to have changed. Do you know anything
Well,
about
there's a couple things
that?
going on, and Tim, correct me if I give bad information, but this is indicated to be the storm water quality pond, which is required by, state and federal government to treat the water before it's outlet. The piece that's down here is more of the regional detention facility, and it would be off what's shown on the plan. Is that correct, Tim?
Not completely.
Not completely. Okay. That's why he's here.
The large new water quality pond that's to the west, as you indicated, is the primary treatment facility for all of the wastewater. There's a small area on the east side of the project along I-70 that will come into this small pond that's proposed behind the new Cabela store, and will treat that for water quality only. So with it, the flow is split slightly, but all of the water from this project and from the neighborhood is going into the new major facility that's on the west side of the project.
Okay, so this is a sort of secondary water quality pond that's treating mostly just the water from that particular location, that lot, the Cabela's lot.
And some water just south of 40th that drains that direction.
Okay. And I also noticed, Meredith, when we were looking at, I think it was Exhibit 3, where we were looking at transportation improvements, just regarding the relocation of the Clear Creek Trail. Am I correct in my assumption that that there will be more changes made to the Clear Creek Trail when the Cabela Drive overpass to the connection, that Diamond Interchange, takes place?
That's right. I mean, obviously, there's going to be new construction in there. I know we talked last time about there being a tunnel for the path to go under the overpass, and so yes, there will be some more modifications.
Will there be any change in the elevation or alignment of the Clear Creek Trail to accommodate that tunnel?
Tim is shaking his head no.
Very little. There is a design for the intersection and crossing of the existing trail with the new Cabela Drive. There will be a ramp down from the Cabela Drive street to access the trail, and there is some there'll be some lowering of the trail to get underneath the street, but not significantly. And again, the scope of the work along the existing trail is very minimal, east or west.
Okay. Well, those are all the questions I think we have. Thanks. Were there any other? Is that it? Okay. Can we hear from the applicant, please?
So I'll go ahead and just.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Armstrong Cabela's, 1 Cabela Drive, Sidney, Nebraska, 69160. Chairman, members of the commission, staff, and neighbors and members of the community, we're very happy to be back here this evening to spend some time with you. I'm going to keep my comments fairly short. I think there's a great deal of information that we intend to share with you this evening, and we have a lot of folks with good stuff to show you, so I'm going to keep my comments brief and get to the meat of the evening. Roughly 3 weeks ago, we were before you with our Clear Creek Crossing Development Concept Official Development Plan that covered approximately 210 acres, which includes the area that's being annexed from Jefferson County, the Coors land, and the Cabela's land. As you know, that concept ODP that Meredith just did a great job of explaining to you where we've been and what we've been doing, and in essence, if you will, the content of what is in that concept ODP really gives us the ability to describe for that full 210 acres the allowable uses, how we treat landscaping, the development standards through the use of the pattern book for the entire development that really for us ensures a uniform, cohesive, and quality development. A very big point to us that this is the beginning of a long-term relationship of this project with the community with these standards set in place. We talked a bit about these standards. We talked a bit about the recommendations of approval for this project at the concept ODP level. And from that point, we have begun and are moving into the specific official development plan that deals with the subject of tonight's meeting. We talked a bit about pedestrian and bike connections in the Clear Creek Trail. And we just had a couple of questions, and we'll try and continue making sure you are comfortable and understand what is being proposed here. But this slide really tells you that beginning at the south end at 32nd Avenue, running all the way through the development along Cabela Boulevard, all the way out to the new interchange, and also over from 40th Avenue, the ability there for folks to have a multimodal means of going through the project has been established. There are also sidewalks on the opposite side. That ability to get from 32nd to Clear Creek Trail is a direct route. You do not have to cross a street once you're there at 32nd Avenue until you reach the trail. You literally would only have to cross driveways. So we think this trail system and the connections that are being provided really is a strong amenity for the community. We also discussed in great detail the traffic improvements that have been completed or will be completed by opening. And Ken made a comment earlier this evening about the commitments that this project is bound by. And I would only add to that one other thing. We also see the consistency that has been applied to this project. Those two things, the commitments that we've gone through the environmental assessment, it identified necessary improvements for this project to go forward. The more recently updated traffic study, as reviewed by the City of Wheat Ridge Public Works, confirms the traffic improvements are sufficient. Our application was referred to Jefferson County, and the county provided no comments in this regard. So when we really go back in time, I'll bring in the other piece, which is this measure of consistency. Beginning back in 2005, 2006, we've done everything we said we would do. We have maintained a relationship with our team, including our traffic consultant, who has fully understood the implications behind the EA and has worked hard to maintain us staying in compliance with those requirements. We are very pleased you recommended the approval of the concept ODP, and this evening we're getting ready to go into a conversation about the specific ODP. The slide that you see in front of you really just highlights the work that has been done to date, which you see in green, and the work yet to be done, and that work will be done before we open anything here at this location. Why we are here this evening, we're looking for your favorable recommendation for us to carry our project forward to the City Council and get the entitlement to make this project move to the next step. Later this evening, once we've had an opportunity to go through the specific ODP, we will be presenting the plat for the project, and we'll share that information with you as well. But really, for the meat of this evening's presentation, we have three architects here this evening, each with their designs to share with you that'll show you how we have managed ourselves in terms of the design of our projects for these specific sites, and they will give you more detailed information about how we've proposed to accomplish that. Again, thank you to the staff and the community for your time and consideration, and we look forward to becoming a part of the Wheat Ridge community. I'll now introduce to you Noel Kupkovic, principal architect, Kupkovic Architecture. He will now speak to you about the specific ODP proposed for Lot 1. And I also might add, Noel is the person behind us moving into this idea of the design standard pattern book, which I think has been a great addition to the project, and we thank him for bringing that to us.
Thank you, Dennis. Good evening, Mr. Commissioner, Planning Commission. My name is Noel Kupkovic with Kupkovic Architecture, 1500 Hamilton Avenue, Cleveland, Ohio, 44114. This slide represents Lot 1-1, which I'll be discussing, which is the portion of the Cabela's property. One thing we want to stress here is, again, a lot of people have talked about it. I think Meredith did a great job, as did Dennis, alluded to the connectivity to the neighborhoods. The Cabela's Drive extension of 32nd is obviously a pedestrian connection, as is 40th Ave. To get as far as vehicular circulation to the site, there's a private drive due south of the Cabela's building and another private drive off of Cabela Drive, which is really intended for more northerly traffic, to go directly to the Cabela's lot. This is a view looking east. You can see I-70, Clear Creek, and the Cabela building. The other lots are defined in this aerial view as well, that other architects and parcel owners are going to come and discuss with you. The shaded out areas, or the ghosted areas, are portions within the lots where we'll have to come back for specific ODP approval. This is a view looking to the southwest. You can see, again, the Cabela building, I-70, Clear Creek, and Cabela Drive. Again, that private drive entry to the Cabela's parcel to the west and to the north. This is the Cabela lot 1.1. This lot is 15.35 acres. The Cabela building is proposed as 130,000 square feet. We're providing 694 parking spaces directly south of the building, meeting all the requirements for open space and landscaping. We are proposing 8 RV parking spaces to the west of Cabela's, and open air boat storage area that will be fenced in to the west of Cabela's as well. There will be boat display on the east side of the building facing 70, and we are also looking at this trail connection to the existing trail on the easterly boundary of this site. The other red lines indicate pedestrian connectivity to those trails, but the multipurpose trail, the larger one, will be on the north edge of 40th Avenue with other sidewalks that lead to those trail connections that ultimately get you to the existing Clear Creek Trail. We have requirements in the design pattern book for primary elevations. Primary elevations are defined as those elevations that face where the pedestrian and vehicular activity occur. This is a similar elevation to the one that you saw in the concept ODP. We are, for example, compliant with our transparency requirement. For tenants over 100,000 square feet, we're required to have 15% of transparency, and that's measured linearly along the facade of the building. We are 17.6%, and that's located in this area here at the primary entrance, and here is the see-through transparent storefront glazing. We're also required on primary facades to have 75% of a palette of primary materials. We chose to work with the cultured stone, aesthetic, stucco, and wood siding. And we are 85% of the primary material of the material on the primary facade. The only real portions that are not these materials happen to be these sloped metal roofs, which are allowed to be used for non-primary elevations. This blow-up is a little better graphic than the black and white image you have in your specific ODP drawings. And what it really starts to define is this is sort of the building facade face. And you can see the articulation standards are creating colonnades, main entry features which come out from the facade in order to meet the articulation standard. And special attention and care was taken to, at the terminus of this private drive, enhancing both the landscaping and hardscape of the primary entrance to the building. These are then the non-primary elevations, but the way the pattern book was written, they still have to meet articulation standards and unifying element requirements. For example, we are required on non-primary facades to have articulations every 75 feet. So, for example, you'll see these cultured stone pilasters, which start solving some of those articulation standard requirements. We also are required to have, for the entire building, 3 unifying elements, and those 3 unifying elements are categorized as either roof forms, structural features, walkway elements, or canopy elements. And you can see that we're creating a covered colonnade here, which starts solving the walkway requirement. We're using a shaded trellis, which is also a walkway unifying element requirement. We're using roof forms and gabled ends, as well as structural features such as timber and the pilasters. So as Meredith said, we're compliant, but I wanted you to sort of get a better understanding as to what we did in order to be compliant. This north elevation is the elevation that faces Clear Creek. So while at the same time I know we're talking about a landscape sort of requirement, we've also taken paid attention to the detail of that so that it doesn't want to be something that's not desirable to look at. We think that it'll be a handsome facade when it's constructed. This east elevation happens to face I-70, and the overall west elevation faces Cabela Drive at quite a distance. Also, as it relates to signage, we're allowed to have 1 square foot of signage for every lineal foot of building perimeter. We have 1,577 lineal feet of building perimeter. We're proposing 1,488 square feet of sign, but those signs are distributed throughout the project. The largest sign being at the southeast corner, which is this sign here, which will be on cultured stone. This sign area is approximately 650 square feet, so it would be our largest sign on this particular building. These blow-ups are intended to show you the utilization of, again, the primary materials and unifying elements: pitched roofs, heavy timber, standing seam metal roofs, wood siding, cultured stone, and cultured stone bases. The cultured stone is also an element that we're using on the corners of the buildings, as well as creating our articulation by the use of pilasters. Another thing that we're also doing is we're using a bracketed wood light fixture that's also similar to the light fixtures we're proposing in the field, in the parking field, so that there's that commonality of the Cabela's brand when you're on the property. This is another blow-up detail. This is the east elevation facing 70. Again, similar materials, as well as massing and articulation and unifying elements. North elevation facing Clear Creek, and a blow-up of the west elevation, which would face Cabela Drive. This is a sort of a bird's eye view of the building, and the reason we wanted to show you this is it sort of starts to help you understand the primary facade, primary elevation, and the non-primary elevation, but through the use of the unifying elements, there's a lot of commonality here, and the aesthetic of the architecture really takes the corner and in essence is around the entire building. The building will also have an extended gable that runs as an open space through the building that will also utilize a natural light, which meets some of the sustainability things I know we're going to discuss briefly. But it also is a sort of a terminus to this spine, and really the merchandising and the layout of the store really revolves. Those who've been in Cabela's understand that this is sort of an important element to the building. This is a better perspective, again showing the timber, the signage, the sloped metal roofs, the storefront windows that allow for the transparency to occur, as well as the cultured stone. This is really a brand for Cabela's. It would be the largest next generation store for the retailer at 130,000 square feet. A similar store is opening this month in Allen, Texas. And the interesting part of this whole design pattern book really started with what could be the common denominator of architectural aesthetics that would still allow for each tenant to have their own brand. For example, when we started writing this, we were thinking that maybe there should be similar this lodge aesthetic, this mountain lodge aesthetic should be maybe utilized across the entire project. But the more we thought about it and the more we looked at really great examples throughout the United States, we said, really Cabela's needs to be the mountain lodge building. The other tenants need to then use the materials, the unifying elements, etc., so that we have a common denominator of architectural aesthetics and planning principles, but every building should have its own identity. I'm going to talk quickly about sustainability. Now, this is for Cabela specifically. We are, as far as the site's concerned, we will utilize native plant species. We will emphasize low water turf areas. We will utilize appropriate plant species that are site-specific for microclimates and hydrozones. We'll use light-colored roofing materials to reduce the heat island effect. And we will definitely provide alternative transportation for bicycle parking and preferred parking for fuel-efficient vehicles. Water efficiency will include high-efficiency irrigation systems, the utilization of reclaimed water for non-potable uses, low water use plumbing fixtures. As far as energy and atmosphere, the building envelope, we will build a better building envelope as far as its R value and air infiltration. We'll utilize high efficiency lighting and lighting controls, as well as high efficiency HVAC systems. We will utilize regional materials and recycled materials. And as far as indoor environmental quality, we'll utilize natural daylighting and reduce the elimination of VOCs in building finishes, which is volatile organic compounds like paints and adhesives. So that's our plan moving forward. The next presenter will be Shad Vermeesh with BR Architecture. He's going to take you through Lot 5.1. Shad.
Thank you, Noel. My name is Shad Vermeesh. That's Vermeesch. I'm with BR Architecture. Address is 2400 East Arizona Biltmore Circle out of Phoenix, Arizona. We're going to walk through quickly the Lot 5.1, which is also known as the Walmart site. Before you is the overall site plan. The lot size is 17.86 acres, and the building size is 177,535 square feet. The pedestrian connection points that were mentioned earlier in the trails run along Cabela Drive right along here, and we are connecting to that along 2 points. First point brings them to both points bring them to the entry, but the first point along here and then cuts up to this point, and the other point along here, and then connects at this point. The vehicular access, there are 2 points of vehicular access to the site. This would be the hook ramp coming off of I-70, Cabela Drive, and then there's a vehicular access point along here, and then which lines up with Clear Creek, and then there's another one a little bit further north that lines up with 40th that enters into the site here. The truck traffic would come in along this to the point that lines up with 40th, come into the site along the west side of the building, around the rear, turn around here, and then come and exit out the same place. There is, and I will get into this a little bit more, but there is access for alternative forms of traffic or vehicular access for bicycles and for vehicles as well. One thing I want to point out on this plan as well, that we have some other images that will further detail this, but there are some significant grade changes, and along right at the hook ramp area along the eastern side, there is a grade change from this point down to our site of about 30 feet. And there's also about a 50-foot landscaping setback right in that area as well. On the south side, along the commercial portion that's not part of this that we're looking at tonight as part of the specific ODP, but as part of the overall development, is there's a grade difference of approximately 27 feet in that location, and then along towards the residential side a little bit further to the west, there's a grade difference of about 24 feet. So you can see that our site is substantially depressed from the surrounding area around the other sides. This is a apron plan along the front part of our building. A few things I want to point out along here. First of all, the pedestrian plazas, there's 3 places specifically where we have pedestrian plazas. One along the western area, an area right here in the middle that also includes some vegetation, and then another area here right attached to the customer drop-off area. Those areas do have benches and trash receptacles and other amenities. The entrances to the building, there are covered walkways in those areas, as well as additional benches. There's one in this location which enters into the grocery side of the building, and then another one in this location which enters into the general merchandise side of the building. And this is the garden center on the eastern side. There are a series of lit bollards that run across the front, with the exception of at the entries where we actually have safety bollards. And those lit bollards provide additional pedestrian amenity in the form of separation from the vehicular and pedestrian traffic, and nighttime lit walkways. And then bicycle racks are located near both of the entries. There's one in this location and one in this location as well. Meredith had asked to give some more information in terms of how we were meeting the pattern book, and that's what's shown before you now. There are a total of 4 categories for the unifying elements, and in the pattern book we're required to meet 3 of those, which we do. One of them, the first one, is the roof forms. We do have articulated roof forms along the front, primarily at the entrances, enhanced roof forms. There are also cornices that run along in various portions of the building parapets as well. Category 2, structural elements, we are using the stone and That is located at various locations. A couple of places are along on the columns, the base of the columns at the main entrance as a base and a wainscot, and that's all along the main part, primarily at the entrances. And then the third one is walkway elements, where we have those pedestrian plaza areas as well as these covered walkways that run along the front, primarily where the customers would be waiting and or coming in and out of the building. In terms of the building signage, we do meet that. We are allowed 1,800 square feet of signage. We are only proposing 500 square feet, all of it along the front part of the building. As far as building articulation, we do meet the 50-foot along the primary facade, 75-foot along the at the visible non-primary facade, which in this instance would be the eastern facade of the building. We do meet that. And then, as Meredith mentioned, along the western and southern portions of the building, those will be pretty much hidden by those grades that I was talking about earlier. So we worked with staff to come up with some solutions along that, where they don't exactly meet that, but they do in terms of the 75-foot articulation, but they do indeed meet the major element articulation. Building transparency, we do meet that. The calculations are on there as well. Building materials, the requirement along 75% of the facade, we are using stucco. It's a material called a quick brick, which is very similar to a brick, except it's a structural masonry unit versus a non-structural masonry unit, such as the brick, but it looks very much like the brick. We're using a couple of different tones, and that's on 3 sides of the building, and then as well as the stone. The other piece that we are showing on here, which is the house, or shows the sign, primary Walmart sign, is a material called a Trespa, and we're proposing that also as a primary material. That is essentially a recycled material. It's made out of recycled wood fiber, and it's a statement to Walmart's commitment to sustainability, which is why their sign is located on that. So all those materials taken together give us 76% of the front facade for primary materials. Here you can see the grades that I was talking about a little bit better. Meredith also showed these to you. The section 1 is taken along the southern border, southern property line, and you can see there the height difference between the floor or the grade of our building compared to the adjacent property, as well as on section 2, which is along the eastern side where the vehicles are on Cabela Drive, and they are significantly above our site. A couple things to take of note: in both locations, there are some landscaping buffers that are included in those, and then as well as on section 1, particularly for those properties to the west, on the southwest, notice that the building is substantially set down below so that the distant views will still be maintained from those properties. These are the all 4 elevations, and a few I really wanted to highlight on these are the materials. I mentioned before, we're using the EIFS and or stucco, a CMU, quick brick, and the Trespa. We've already talked about the front elevation. And I'll get in, there's some blow-ups of some of these elevations as well. This is the eastern elevation with the garden center, where we're incorporating those materials as part of a screening fence material. And then we have an archway. We're using the quick brick, and all this is the integral colored CMU and or quick brick. And then along the western side, which faces the Coors Pond, we're using the integral colored material as well, and a mix of some other things and some articulation to achieve that. And then the rear of the building, given a little bit less emphasis on that, simply because it will never be seen except for by the delivery guys and the operation guys. So here's one of the blow-ups of one of the entrances. This is the one on the grocery side, where you can kind of get a better feel for the use of the materials and all the things that are going on there. where we've got the integral colored block. We've got the ephes, the quick brick, and the stone, and the trespa again as well. This is the eastern side, a little bit better view of the garden center on the bottom right-hand corner, and that screen fence, and then that arch wall with those canopies, incorporating the use of the quick brick on the bottom left-hand side. And to give you kind of a better feel for how that's going to look in a three-dimensional format, this is a perspective view of that entrance on the grocery side, where we've got those materials again that we're showing. In terms of the lighting, and we're going to work through this as part of the FDP, but on the photometric plan. But what's shown here is that the property line, basically we're committing to and is required as part of the photometric plan to not have any light bleed off the site. And so what we're showing here is how we would achieve that. And those lights that are shown, they're decorative parking lot light. The lamp itself does not come below that light, so it's a full cutoff fixture. And these fixtures do allow for some directional control so that we can control which way those lights shine to make sure that we achieve that zero bleed off from the site. One other point that I want to mention here is that as part of our sustainability effort, those parking lot lights are LED lights, and that's throughout the site. In terms of the sustainability, in addition to what Noel has talked about in terms of the site and water efficiency, there's a few things. There's a list before you. I'm not going to read through the entire list. There's a few things I want to highlight. The energy and atmosphere. Walmart does use daylight harvesting, and which significantly reduces the amount of energy used to light the inside of the building. We also use a high-efficiency HVAC system in coordination with a central management system, so that the HVAC and the management system allows them to significantly reduce the running times for their equipment. In terms of the materials, we're going to be using regional materials as well as the Trespa, which is a recycled material. And then in terms of recycling, a couple of points. We also do a sandwich bale program for the cardboard for the shipping, this material that's shipped. They take the cardboard, they bale it, and they recycle that. And then in the concrete for primarily the floor, we do incorporate 15 to 20% fly ash in the mix. And the fly ash, as some of you may know, is a byproduct of coal power, the coal from power plants. And off to the right-hand side are three of the basically overall goals that Walmart uses as a guide to how they incorporate sustainability into their program, and those are be supplied 100% renewable energy, sell products that sustain people and the environment, and create zero waste. These are ongoing programs and goals that they use in their everyday business decisions as they move forward with their program. And with that, I would like to introduce Karen and the team of THF.
Good evening. I'm Karen Blumenstein with THF Realty, 600 Grant Street in Denver. Last name Blumenstein. Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. It's a pleasure to be with you tonight. This is the first time that THF has had a chance to be in front of you, and we're excited to be here and excited to talk to you about the opportunity that we're taking to be a member of your community. Let's see if I can click this forward. All right. So I'll tell you a little bit about THF Realty. THF is a private real estate development company. We develop, own, and manage all of our real estate. Founded in 1991, we have 100-plus shopping centers across the country, 20 million square feet, and we're about the 19th largest and the 10th largest private developer. We're located in Colorado in a number of jurisdictions: Grand Junction, Steamboat, Brighton, Firestone, Monument, Lakeside, and now, hopefully, here in Wheat Ridge. A couple things that are somewhat unique about THF: we're long-term holders of our properties, so we don't develop anything with the intention to sell. We hope to be here 20, 30 years in the community, longer than I'm sure most of us will be still here in the community. But we own and operate everything. We manage it on our own, maintain it on our own, and we lease it on our own. So when we look at a community, we take a long time to make a decision to come into the community. We're excited to be here, and we think this is a great place for THF to participate. You may know the THF initials stand for To Have Fun. Hopefully we're all having a great time tonight. And this gives you a little sense of how we approach our work and our mission. You know, we really are hoping to be the best developer in America. We're looking to make long-term commitments to the communities that we're in. You'll see us do a lot of things that are a little bit unusual for developers. We do a lot of public art. We do a lot of public functions. We like to participate in the community itself. And we hope to have strong relationships with the community, and we have very strong relationships with our retailers. So we're excited to be here and excited to talk to you about our development. I'm going to introduce Christopher Kenton with SEM Architecture. We'll talk to you about our specific parcels. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Christopher Kenton with SEM Architects, 677 South Colorado Boulevard, Denver, Colorado, 80246. The THF parcels include lots 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 3, 5.2, and 5.3. 2.1, sorry. 2.1 is the outparcel lot. Okay. Sorry, I'm trying to. 2.1 is the outparcel lot, while 2.2 is the junior anchor or mini lot, and the remainder of the lots are considered what we call the outparcel lots, and 3 is considered the shop slot. Cabela's Drive provides the main access for all the lots, while we do provide access off of Clear Creek Drive and off of the internal drives into Walmart. Unlike the Cabela's and Walmart site, the THF parcels shown represent general intent. However, as we anticipate that as the specific mix of tenants develop, there will be some changes that will be taken care of during the FDP process. Because we don't know who the final tenants will be for the mini anchors, the mini anchor elevations are only representative of the architectural style, color palette, and detailing for the mini anchor lineup. Specific designs, again, will be submitted during the FDP process. But what we've tried to provide here is to give you guys an idea of the character and how these things relate to the design pattern book. As an example, with this mini anchor, we show how we've articulated the main entry feature using the primary materials. We've articulated the corner element, again, using those, and utilizing some of the unifying pieces to tie the overall elevation together. We've also utilized some of the secondary elements, some of the roof forms, to create the overall aesthetic. On the side elevation, you see how we've broken down the long facade using a secondary element, and bookended the corner aspect of the building with an additional tower. Similar to the mini anchor concepts, the shop elevations as presented also are representative in architectural style, color palette, and detailing, and will again be submitted during the FDP process and use the design standard pattern book for requirements of transparency, materials, and articulation. As you can see in this example, we've again utilized the similarity in the roof forms and parapet lines, the utilization of the primary materials, as well as some of the non-primary materials in terms of the awnings using metal roof, as well as larger portions of stucco. The following sets of vignettes will give you kind of a closer example of some of the ideas and concepts that we're talking about that relate back to the design pattern book. Again, the entry elevation at a mini anchor, you see the cultured stone product that surrounds the entry where the pedestrian enters. You also see the projecting overhead canopies that provide shade and shelter, as well as some of the overall roof forms. We utilize the non-primary materials as signage background and utilize brick as pilasters along the base of the building to create a tactile environment where the pedestrians will walk. This is a blow-up of the corner entry piece, or the corner element at the mini anchor. Oh. This is the corner element piece on the mini anchor. Again, you see how we utilize the primary building materials of the stone, the glazing, the horizontal projecting canopy, and the stucco, along with the parapet line and the cornice profile. This element is the element along the long side of the minis, and this is how we've begun to break up that long facade with a secondary architectural element. Again, utilizing a lot of the major materials. We have the brick as pilasters, we have the brick as a wainscot, we have the stone which creates the framework, and the stucco above with the cornice line. This is the example of what the corner element or the end cap unit of the shop space could be. Again, a lot of the same concepts apply here where we're utilizing the stone around it as a feature element, the cornice profile, the projecting canopies, etc., as we tie those elements together. I don't know why it keeps going the wrong way. I guess I'm rolling it backwards. This would be a secondary end cap application where we've gone with a much simpler form, where we utilize stucco as the overall material up high in the signage band, while still maintaining some of the more tactile materials like the stone, as well as the horizontal projecting canopies overhead to create shadow and shade from the sun. And finally, this would be a midsection or another portion of the mini or of the shop space. Again, utilizing a lot of the same elements to tie the overall building together, as well as maintaining all of the requirements within the design pattern book for building variation or articulation and transparency. As you can also see on these three overall elevations of a potential mini anchor, and again, these are just representative of what these could look like once the tenant mix becomes established. We are presenting four-sided architecture. And through those variety of architectural elements, primary and secondary, we believe that we've broken down the facade in a way that makes it feel like there is no actual back of the building, but merely four-sided. Two of the issues that staff had raised were with regards to the landscaping and the view into the service and delivery areas with the minis that backed up adjacent to Interstate 70. And so what we've proposed in this area, as Meredith mentioned, is that we would have increased landscaping through this area. We also have a screen wall that covers a portion of the corner space and the 15-foot wide minimum landscape zone. Now, with all of these, what we're proposing is that part of the non-specific part of this is that these tenants haven't been defined yet, so that during the FDP process, we will be able to finalize what these building footprints actually are based on tenants, and then start to accommodate all the staff's desires in terms of landscaping. The other aspect is the view from which you see from I-70. And as you can see in this site section, the view from I-70 is really of the upper half of the building, thus eliminating the view down towards the delivery and service areas. We're also utilizing that landscape buffer to screen any potential view down there. But ultimately, the view from I-70, from the approach, is going to be of the upper level of the buildings and the signage areas. And that kind of goes back to what we showed earlier in the four-sided architecture, how we have created a lot of variation in the parapet line as well as material and color changes that start to tie the building together. In terms of sustainable design, a lot of the same things that you've heard before. We'll look at concepts such as using white reflective TPO roofing, energy efficient HVAC units, insulated storefront glass, energy efficient lights like the LEDs mentioned previously, rain sensors on the irrigation systems, low water, drought tolerant landscaping, pedestrian bike trails for alternative transportation, and use of regional materials. Our designs will also meet or exceed the current 2006 International Energy Code as established. At this time, I'd like to turn it back over to Karen, who will finalize some of our points of discussion.
Thank you again. I just wanted to make two comments with respect to the conditions that staff has suggested. We've spoken with staff and appreciate their comments and like to suggest a couple of minor modifications to them. With respect to the buffer that Christopher spent some time talking about, particularly with respect to comments with respect to the northeast corner for additional buffering, our suggestion is that we address that at the FDP level, primarily because, again, these are illustrative building footprints, so we don't actually know the depth of that building. And once the building is established, it would be the appropriate time to address a buffer that reflects the actual building footprint. So we're perfectly comfortable with the idea of language that says you have additional buffering in that northeast corner and leaving the definition of the size of that buffer to the actual footprint that goes in there. The second comment reflected staff's concern about the use of painted concrete, and that concern seems to come from 2 points. One is that this material is not currently in the design pattern book, and as we know, the design pattern book is really going to control these undefined users as we move forward into the FDP stage. Our suggestion is that we will add that as a material that's permissible in the design pattern book, but address the second concern that staff has that this not look like a tilt-up building by ensuring that if we use that material, it has to be a textured paint finish. So we'd like to hope that we get the Commission's support with those modifications to the conditions by staff. Thank you. Carolyn White's back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commission, members of staff, members of the public. Once again, my name is Carolyn White. I'm Land Use Counsel for Cabela's. And just to sort of bring together and tie together everything you've heard so far, I'd like to summarize for you once again what it is we're asking you to recommend to City Council and also how this meets the overall criteria applicable to your evaluation of a specific ODP. We are, as you know, you previously approved the Clear Creek Crossing Concept ODP 3 weeks ago, and you approved that based on the set of 5 criteria for rezoning. Those same 5 criteria apply to a specific ODP. So the question before you tonight is whether this specific ODP, as it's been presented to you, meets those 5 criteria and also is consistent with the concept ODP that you already approved. And now we're going to go through each of these criteria in lengthy detail. No, sorry, we're not going to do that. Actually, we just would like to concur with the staff report. I think the staff did a very thorough job of explaining how they believe the specific ODP meets all the criteria for the rezoning. We agree and concur with that analysis. There's nothing specific I would like to add. I would also like to mention that with the exception of the 2 conditions that Karen just mentioned to you, applicable to the buffer on the THF site and applicable to the painted concrete, we do concur with and agree with all of the other proposed staff conditions. And so what we'd like to ask you to do is to make your recommendation for approval of the specific ODP with the staff conditions as proposed to be modified as we proposed tonight, with the addition of textured concrete and that the width of the buffer be determined at the FDP stage. With those 2 modifications, we're in complete concurrence with staff, and we hope you'll see how the different parts of this all come together under the unifying theme of the pattern book, under the unifying elements to create the Clear Creek Crossing development, which we hope and believe will be a really fantastic addition to the city of Wheat Wheat Ridge, of which you can be very proud. With that, we'll conclude our formal presentation, and of course, our entire team is ready to answer any questions you may have either now or at the conclusion of the public comment, and also just remind you that we'd like to request the opportunity to make concluding remarks following public comment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. White. Do we have questions for any of the applicants who've spoken? Yes.
On page 3, I'm assuming that there's a dash. The dash circle has to do with the turning radius on the west side of Cabela's.
Page 3 of the specific ODP.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, isn't that your truck turnaround? Yeah, that's the delivery truck turnaround.
It appears that, that dash, that turnaround, what it's doing is it's eliminating that buffer. There's virtually almost no buffer along that lot line right there. Is that correct?
Let me, if I may, I'd like to ask the architect for that project to address that question. I'm not sure exactly how to answer that. Noel, can you talk about that?
You have very good eyes. That is, yes, the turning radius for a tractor trailer. And typically when we lay these out, we do a turning radius. The actual movement may not even be this movement. It's really more diagrammatic. But yes, that's true that we're touching the lot line and interrupting that little landscaped edge. So we'll take another look at that. There is some open space as well to the north of there, or making a modification to the layout of the RV parking to accommodate that appropriately. But that's a good catch.
And I guess another question too would be that, I could ask the question why there's an overage of parking. It kind of seems that possibly the overage of parking has kind of posed this problem of pinching that buffering area. But I guess the question I would like to ask is, if for some reason, we're not able to provide a landscape buffer for that area, would you consider putting in some type of screening wall because of the width in that particular area?
You're talking about the particular area where the loading is?
Yes.
I think, we'd consider it so long as it was an appropriate type of wall. I don't think you really want a hard wall there. Maybe that could be a vegetated wall, something that will be more in keeping with, what's happening from a landscaping perspective to the creek.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then on what I've noticed, and maybe this is just an error, that there's several references to refer to page 2 for the ODP landscape standards.
That's page 2 of the concept ODP.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
The landscape standards are set forth in the concept ODP.
Okay. And then what type of material is that 8-foot high decorative screen fence made out of? Would that be a metal decorative screen fence?
Which one are you asking about specifically?
It's the one that's just west of the boat storage.
Is that right at the lot line, Scott, that you're referring to? I see.
Oh, is it? I'm sorry. It looks like it's just surrounding the boat storage. I was thinking that it was on the lot line.
Yeah, the only screen wall in the elevations would be the one next to loading.
Okay.
And the materials for that screen wall would be the stucco and the cultured stone. That screen wall is 17 foot 6 inches high.
Okay. And then I have some questions on page 5.
Shad? You're referring to the Walmart site, lot 5.1?
One of my concerns is that it's pretty obvious there's a trash compactor within 100 feet of that residential property, and it looks like you've done a really good effort of, there's a lot of grade separation to help kind of mitigate that. I'm just trying to think ahead, that, what's if there's any type of problem down the road with the residences of that area complaining about noise from that trash compaction, how can that be addressed, I guess?
I'll let the architect answer it from an architectural standpoint, but I'll just point out from a legal standpoint at least, your code and state statute sets forth certain maximum noise standards that may not be exceeded when a commercial property butts up against a residential property, and those you have the power to enforce through your normal code enforcement mechanisms. Okay. But there may be some additional architectural measures designed to mitigate that, but you have that power right now already.
And architecturally, there is an additional solid screen wall that surrounds that to help mitigate that. But in addition to that, I just wanted to point out that one of the sustainability goals for Walmart was the recycled material aspect, and they're working towards that. And so that is being used less and less as a result of that recycle goal.
Okay. And then my next set of question is, what is the landscape percentage on page 6, which is what is the landscape data, and maybe I'm not seeing it for parcel 2 and parcel 5.
May I ask your indulgence for a minute while I get the right person up here?
Sorry, applicants, you're probably going to have to be getting up and sitting down a whole lot for a little bit, but bear with us.
The question was on which parcels?
On parcel 2 and parcel 5.
Parcel 2, it's the third category down, so you see that it's 30%.
Okay, thank you.
And parcel 5 is the third category down as well, and you see that's 39%.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have.
George?
Sure. Knoll or shad? I noticed that both of you have in your sustainability description have used essentially the USGBC LEED format, the 5 categories. I just wanted to confirm, because we had discussed this last time, that there is or isn't an intention to actually attempt LEED certification on the construction.
It is not our intent to pursue LEED certification on this project. While Walmart does incorporate many of the LEED components into their sustainability program, and as well as other sustainability systems such as Energy Star, ASHRAE, they all have their own, and IBC is actually coming out with one of theirs. We strive to incorporate many of these aspects, not just focus on one individual one.
And that's also true for the Cabela's parcel.
Okay. All right. You weren't going to make him come all the way up?
Trying to save him a
trip. I guess I'd like to spend just a couple seconds asking questions on the points related to the buffer on the northeast corner of Lot 2.2 and the painted concrete, and try to just get a better picture of your request to amend those on the on our conditions. I guess I'd like maybe first to hear specifically what you're asking for and what you're suggesting related to the northeast corner screening.
Okay. Let me correct one comment that was made, that there's a screen wall in the northeast corner. There's actually a retaining wall that sits along Clear Creek Drive that comes through the parcel there. and 40th Avenue. So it's a retaining wall that's 10 feet high. It'll screen about the bottom 5 feet of the building, but it's not a screen wall, so just for clarification purposes. Our suggestion is really because, again, the Lot 2 parcels, the Lot 5 parcels, all the THF parcels are shown from a footprint standpoint just as illustrative of the way we would be using massing of the buildings. So you may have a tenant that comes in that's 180 feet. You may have a tenant that comes in that's 200 feet deep. Depending upon the user, then we could define what that buffer would look like. So we're perfectly comfortable with saying you should have enhanced buffering in that corner, but our suggestion is once you actually have an FDP with a footprint of a building, that staff then tells us what buffer they actually think is appropriate for that use.
So enhanced buffering, in your interpretation, could include an expansion of the buffer as I think requested, or some other physical buffering that would take less horizontal space, or.
Yeah, I think we'd like the flexibility to really be responsive to what the actual use is there, and staff is welcome to prescribe for us what they suggest. I think the intention is to have a landscape buffer in that area, and it's really the question of how deep into the site that buffer would go.
Okay. So I guess what I was wondering is if the landscape buffer, because of how this might get developed, wasn't adequate enough, there could be other options in that space that you would consider.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, and then the other one, I guess, was the clarification on the painted concrete and what specifically what you're asking for, and I want to make sure that I understand. You're asking for it to be amended in the pattern book?
Yeah, so I think that, and again, Meredith might be able to clarify this more than me, but I believe the comment comes from the fact that it's not shown as a primary material in the pattern book right now, and we are showing it on the elevations. So our intention is to amend the pattern book to include that as a primary material, but to acknowledge the other concern of staff, which is that they don't want this to look like a tilt-up building. What we'd agree to do is make sure that's a texture paint and not just a flat finish paint.
Okay, and so, but not to pick on tilt-up buildings, but is it in fact a concrete wall section, and that's why you're asking for this amendment, and that your intention on the construction type is that it is it's a concrete?
So the full wall panel is not a tilt-up, but that segment could be a concrete segment, and it's really primarily because that's a more stable use of materials. And again, as I mentioned, THF's a long-term holder of our property, so when we define our material use, we're really looking for length of life. So it's going to be 20, 25 years length of life for us. So we're not talking about tilt-up walls for full wall, but that section may end up being a concrete section.
The other aspect of the textured paint is that we believe, through our experience, that we can provide a stucco finish look, much with the reveal pattern and the color and the texture of the paint, that from the perspective of where you're seeing it and where we're utilizing it on the backs of the buildings and up high along the fronts, that it would be perceived as stucco, not as paint or even textured paint.
That's it for right now.
Okay. Do you have anything? Okay. Do you have something? I've got a couple of questions. Let's see. Sorry, just reviewing my notes. You guys had a lot to say, which is good. Mr. Varmish, with respect to the Trespa panels, I admire the dedication to using recycled materials in building. I think that's great. When you were going through your presentation, those Trespa panels were a component in reaching that 75% of the area of the primary facade for primary materials. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not noticing Trespa panels as a listed primary material in our design pattern book, so we kind of come back to the same question that George had in regards to painted concrete not being in the pattern book. I mean, personally, I like the idea of using recycled materials. I'm just looking at the, if we need to adhere to the, primary materials constituting 75% of the area of the primary facade. If those Trespa panels are helping to add up to that 75%, do we need to? Or are you asking us to make a change to the design pattern book to include Trespa panels as well?
I think I can maybe address that, and Meredith, you'll correct me if I misspeak, but we believe that the way that the design pattern book is written, it does allow for some variation if staff believes that the proposed variation meets the overall intent of what's already in the design pattern book. And it's my understanding that we have that conclusion or that interpretation from staff as to the Trespa panels, but did not have that interpretation as to the concrete panels, which was why we felt we needed to seek an amendment for the concrete panels. Is that right, Meredith?
Okay. All right. Mr. Kenton, regarding, just to follow up on Commissioner Pond's comments and questions, I understand this sort of stability and longevity issue of concrete, and I think that's great, for a building to be more sustainable. Having it last longer is a good start. What are your concerns in terms of maintenance on painted concrete over the lifetime of the building?
We've actually found that the maintenance of the painted concrete is actually easier than maintaining sometimes the synthetic stucco, because we can keep it more consistent. It's broken down in a panelized basis, so you don't end up with a shotgun effect of different colors. It's very difficult sometimes to come back in and match stucco, but when we're talking about a textured paint, it's much easier to come in and match that within the rest of the panels. So maintenance over time, you don't start to see those deteriorations that have been replenished or fixed over time. So it ultimately is an easier maintenance sometimes than stucco.
Okay. Thank you. I think those are all the questions I have, too. Further questions for the applicant? Okay. Do we want to take public comment first? Okay. Do you have a list for people who wanted to make public comment? Great. Great. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 people who signed up to speak in regards to this case. What I'd like to do is call your name, and if you'd still like to speak, if your questions have not been answered or your concerns have not been addressed and you'd like to address the commission, you can come on up, state your name and your address, and say what you'd like to say. Let's start with Kevin Smith. Is Kevin Smith here?
Yeah, that's me over here.
Okay.
I don't know if everyone can hear me or not, but I live at 3230 Oak Street.
Yeah, hold on. Let's get a mic over to you just so for our minutes and our records we can hear what you have to say.
Hold it. Yeah, here we go. Well, I'd like to read into the record a statement from the Committee of Concerned Citizens of the City of Wheat Ridge in support of the meaningful incorporation of the Clear Creek Greenbelt into the Clear Creek Crossing, otherwise known as the committee. Over 30 years ago, Wheat Ridge was designated Tree City USA by the Arbor Day Foundation. This designation is given to communities that strive to incorporate the natural environment into their public spaces. Wheat Ridge has held this designation ever since. The Clear Creek Greenbelt is one of the crown jewels of the Wheat Ridge open space system, and on just about any day, thousands of pedestrians, cyclists travel up and down the multi-use bike path, some traveling many miles. Clear Creek Greenbelt is a sacred place to those of us who worship the natural environment. 5 years ago, we first learned that Cabela's would build a 2,000 square foot corporate flagship right here in our own town. We dreamed of a truly unique facility next to our cherished Clear Creek Greenbelt with a water feature for fishermen to test their new fishing tackle and for Boy and Girl Scouts to try out a canoe, maybe for the first time. Many in the audience have driven over 200 miles to visit the Cabela's store in Sidney, Nebraska, and have shared this dream of a flagship store. Well, the economy took a downturn, and economic concerns required Cabela's to downsize its plan to 130,000 square feet and to bring in a partner with deep pockets to share the site. We learned that the Walmart was going to become the main anchor tenant, and the flagship seemed to have sailed away to be replaced by a big box floating upon a sea of asphalt among acres of parked cars. Concerned citizens visited the site and went to view the plans. Standing on our cherished greenbelt on the north side of Cabela's site, we looked towards the south. On the left is a depression basin to catch parking lot runoff, and on the right is a loading dock 2 football fields long, soon to be littered with idling semi-trucks and trash dumpsters. It doesn't have to be this way. Citizens wish to incorporate our cherished greenbelt in a meaningful way. The citizens of Jefferson County own the land and wish to build a gateway to those who arrive via the greenbelt. One citizen's vision is to fold the drainage basin into a water feature for testing a fly rod and put that inside an open space park with acres of trees, possibly building a 20-foot tall landscape berm or retaining wall sloped with a small forest of trees along the north side to screen the loading dock. Access open space funds if necessary so that Wheat Ridge and Cabela's don't have to carry the burden alone. Screen away the loading dock and above it possibly even put a balcony so that Cabela's customers on the second floor can watch wildlife, gold panners, and fishermen on Clear Creek and enjoy refreshments. Call the open space Cabela's Park if you'd like, and nickname it Gateway to the Gateway to the Rocky Mountains. We may no longer have a flagship store, but we can still have a Rocky Mountain Gateway store. Travel south from here along the eastern border of the Cabela's project. The park can continue with a bike path separated from the road by a tall noise barrier. From there, the trail travels through more trees, landscaping with benches and bike racks. As you turn west to face Cabela's main entrance, on your left will be a forested greenbelt, and on your right, Clear Creek and an open space park. Cyclists can dismount, and pedestrians, people in wheelchairs, will never have to compete with cars. What a lovely gateway to Cabela's it could be. As the path continues south, there must be curb cuts, bike racks, and crosswalks so that cyclists can visit not only Cabela's, but the many anchors without competing with cars or being blocked by curbs. Continuing south towards Walmart, you'll see at least 2 trees for every parked car in view. Features along the stretch should incorporate lighting, curb cuts, fountains, trees, benches, picnic tables, bike racks, and red bikes from the Right Share program. As you travel down the path to Walmart, there must be more landscaping. This part of the design only calls for 18% landscaping when other parts of the design require 30 to 40 and almost 50%. Walmart must put in more trees and more landscaping to support our Tree City USA designation. We demand that the City Council require Walmart to double that 18% landscaping and provide 36% landscaping and plant at least 2 trees for every parked car. They can also have their own park. This park will allow shoppers to spend more time shopping, allowing a place to rest and children to play. It can serve as a monument to what a good corporate partner can do for a community. There is excess parking throughout the development. We wish to turn that excess parking into landscaped areas with thousands of trees to support our Tree City USA designation. From the highway, you will not see an ocean of asphalt. You will see a modern shopping center among a forest of trees to grace our natural world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments.
Just a question from staff. Did you want to enter the correspondence? Okay.
The next person who signed up is Dan Laza? Okay, thank you.
LPP.
Hi. Oh, Lop, thank you.
Yep. I'm a resident of Wheat Ridge. I live at 10565 West 32nd Avenue. I'm a hunter and fisherman. Buy all my gear from Cabela's. In fact, my wife says way too much. I expect to be spending time down at the store, a lot actually. I'm also an avid walker and backpacker. I spend every morning walking down behind where Cabela's is going to be, so I've become very familiar with all the wildlife in the area directly behind Cabela's store. There hasn't been much talk about that this evening. I'm not talking just about Clear Creek. I'm talking about the slough, that I call it a slough, that runs along the south side of the bike path. It's a rich wildlife area, has ducks, geese that are right now making nests there. There'll be several small birds shortly. There's a lot of turtles in there, big snapping turtles. There are a lot of bass in there. There's 2 families of beavers. There are muskrats. I see a bald eagle there periodically, and I was talking to a fellow this morning who said the eagles are nesting up close to the golf course. We have to, I think, incorporate this area into the design. I don't think it's a difficult thing to do, but I don't think there's much thought has been given to doing that. I don't think that most folks using the bike path are going to be interested in looking at the backside of Cabela's. I think that we could plant trees, bushes. There are a lot of things that could be done to incorporate the Clear Creek area right behind Cabela's into the project. The trail is heavily used, actually, as Kevin pointed out, all the time, and on the weekends, quite heavily used by families, and it would be great for them to be able to access the whole development. And it was interesting to note the architect mentioned a possible trail. I think it's a great idea, and I hope it happens, because on at least the design I looked at, there was no trail. Hopefully it will happen. I think there's also an opportunity here for Cabela's to work hand in hand with volunteers in the community, really enhancing that back part of the store. And I know I'm available, and I know there are a lot of other individuals available that would be glad to help them do that. So I hope you take that into consideration in improving the project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next person on our list is Roxanne Runkle. Did I get that right? Great. If you can just come up to the mic. Just come up to the mic, tell us your name and your address, please.
My name is Roxanne Runkle. My address is 3415 Alkire Way. And I want to thank you, Scott Ohm, for addressing the issue of Walmart, because I am that resident that lives behind the Walmart, or will be. And when the whole Cabela opportunity came up. I wasn't real thrilled. None of us were. We liked the wildlife and the natural open space. But as we went along, I would rather have them as a neighbor than some other entity. Anyways, the things that I would like to address, when I was first looking at the plan, I thought, well, maybe Cabela's is backing up to my property, and that wasn't so bad. But now that I know that it's a Walmart, I'm very concerned, actually. I live there alone. I own 2 acres there, and I have a horse, and I board 2 horses. And so my main concern is security for people that may be going to Walmart, going behind Walmart, and then going into our neighborhood. And on the frontage road along just off of 32nd, that is between the residential area and the gas station and La Quinta, there is a large brick wall for privacy and security. And that is what I guess I would request or see if you could look into as something of substantial size to deter folks from coming from the shopping area into the residential neighborhood from the south side of the development and from the east side of the development. My property borders both of those, so on the south side it would be the Walmart, and on the other side it is Lot 4, which they haven't determined what that will be yet, but right now they're indicating that it would be a hotel. And this isn't the time to address that issue, but if it is something like that, these are people that are coming and going, and that just adds to the security concern for both me and my horses and my neighbors. Let's see. I'd like to thank the first gentleman who spoke about the 36% landscaping. I would agree with that. That area used to be filled with trees and deer and other wildlife. And when they took that down, when they leveled everything, the noise level has definitely gone way up. And so noise is a concern. And then also the lighting. I know that they've addressed, some of the issues, but I do have some materials. I work for the National Park Service, and we have concerns for reducing noise impacts in the national parks. And I guess I'd like to just offer that to whoever might be interested. Do I give that here, or?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. And let's see. Right now, as far as noise is concerned, they are doing construction right now, and there are large impacts, noise impacts from the construction they're doing now. And I don't know what might be possible, but there are some noise-reducing treatments, noise barriers, sound barriers, and there's information. I copied it. It looks like this, and it's also in that book that I just turned in there, and for reference on some ideas of sound barriers. Let's see, what else I was writing notes as I was listening because I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to hear and what I would want to say. But I did make a note that I would like to invite all of the members of the council over to my place to take a look, maybe have a barbecue. No, and I am a federal worker, so they may be shutting us down. So anytime next week would be great over lunch. No, but to come and just take a view from where I live. They'd mentioned that there was a 24-foot depression from the residence to where the Walmart would be, and I'm just kind of guesstimating, and maybe one of the architects would be able to help me, but I'm guessing it would be about where this front row is. It would be about 24 feet. I don't know, maybe someone can help me out a little bit with that, but that's not very far if you look, and I'll be looking at a Walmart. And we all know that the delinquents are the ones that go behind the building to smoke or whatever, and I want to make sure that they don't come into our neighborhood. And then on the picture, let's see, it was Exhibit 6. I think it's Section 3 where it shows a real severe drop. Looks like a cliff. There's some two trees on top, and then it goes straight down, and then there's a car in the back of Walmart. Well, it currently doesn't look like that at all, and that's why I would like to invite you over. It looks more like the section above. It's a gradual slope, and the trees are me. So I guess I would like to, reemphasize that something more than fencing or landscaping, would be important to those of us who live in that neighborhood. And let's see if I'm sure I could think of some other things. I just would recommend that I definitely believe in sustainable design, and I would ask that you require that of your residents, of the people that are, or the tenants, I'm not sure what you call them. And just a kind of a suggestion for the retail, the small retails. I have a couple of ideas of what I'd like to see, but what I'm thinking about was the view from I-70, and I don't know if this is something that businesses do, but I know that if I was driving along I-70 and I wanted to find a Pinkberry and I saw the sign there, I would get off and go. So I was wondering if there was a possibility of signage on that I-70 side. Just a thought. I guess that's it that I can think of. Also, Walmarts are known for allowing RV parking, and that means, people come in and they can spend the night there. And again, it's a transient type of, not transient in a negative way, but people that are, not staying there, not like a office building. And I'll definitely want to come back and talk about that Lot 4 and hope for an office building there, just to mention that. And let's see, Mr. Vermees also mentioned that only the delivery guys will see the back of Walmart. Well, I'll be living with it, so thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
I would like to have staff or the applicant address the issue of the fences, because I thought there were fences both on the south side of the Walmart and along that frontage road by La Quinta.
I think we've got to, go back in time and look at the original ODP. The original ODP calls out a zone, which is a horizontal distance, that specifies that within that zone, a screening nature of a combination of landscape and or fencing material needs to be approved as part of the development of that lot. That hasn't gone away. It still exists. A cross-section that shows two trees only shows you the trees at the cross-section. It doesn't show you the trees that would have to be planted along the length that would be necessary to provide the screening between the residence and the commercial property to the north. The second thing is that cross-section that we were looking at is the cross-section after the earthwork has been done. So what's there today obviously will have to change. So over time, yes, the grading will change, but the screening requirement has not gone away.
And there will be a fence screen security along the west side of Cabela's Avenue, between 32nd and the Walmart. There will be a fence along the west side of Cabela's Avenue.
I think that, Walmart can specifically answer it. It does require a screening. Ken, I think we just need to go back and look at the original language. I can't remember if it called for fencing and landscape or what it called for.
I think the specific area that Mr. Matthews is concerned with is the area immediately to the north of 32nd Avenue, where it's adjacent to the residential on the west.
Yes.
So the existing brick wall.
Yeah,
what you're asking.
Just south of Lot 4.
Yeah. Yeah, just south of Lot 4, there is a wall there today, yes, and there will be a wall going forward.
Okay.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
Right. Scott Christopher, would you like to come and speak? Great.
I'm Scott Christopher. I live at 2660 Gray Street in Wheat Ridge, 80214. As a Wheat Ridge resident, I'm very excited about this development. The economic positive impact to our city is very important. The tax revenue is significant for our community. The job opportunities are very positive. I'm here to talk about transportation in that area, access to the retail, traveling along Clear Creek, and bicycle traffic through that corridor as well. So I'm pleased to hear from the developers about a focus on bicycle and pedestrian access. I'm not sure we talked about transit access, which I think is also quite important as we focus on sustainability. So in diving in, I'm not sure as a layperson and as a resident that I see all the details that I would like to understand to ensure that there is sufficient and safe travel to these retail locations from bus or hiking with your new purchase at Cabela's and access to the Clear Creek Trail, or bicycling. Would like to see bicycle ramp access from the Clear Creek path to the new Cabela Avenue safely on both sides of the road and from both directions on the path. There's significant bicycle travel along 32nd Avenue in this corridor. So while that's not a part of this site plan, if I read it correctly, that is an important consideration for safety, that we can accommodate the travel through of bicyclists, and there is, I think, significant transit traffic, pedestrian traffic there as well. Access to the actual developer properties is not defined as I would like to see, or I was not aware of it. So while there's talk of bike parking, which is very important, I think, in terms of best practices for this development effort and for our city, I'd love to see some specific numbers of bicycles that are accommodated in the parking areas and what the physical infrastructure will be. We've all had those experiences in parking lots where it's a bit of a no man's land when we're in our automobile, and it can be much worse, of course, when we're on foot or on bicycle. So those additional details, I think, would be valuable. We're obviously going to have additional motor vehicle traffic in this area, and one of the things we want to do is encourage and support as much as we can alternatives to private motor vehicles to address traffic congestion. We also hopefully will have a chance to hear from Molly Hansen, who's here from Live Well Wheat Ridge, about the focus of that organization in our community to work to have livable communities where transportation choices other than cars are a good option, so that we can address some of our health issues in our community, et cetera. I think I'll end my comments there, but this is a very positive development for our community, and I'd love to see a few more details before final approvals are given to ensure that we can accommodate utilizing these facilities, whether we jump in our car or jump on our bicycle or are on foot in that area. Thanks.
Great. Thanks for your comments. Just briefly, Meredith, can you refresh our memories on what the ratio is that's mandated for bike parking in relationship to number of parking spaces?
Sure. The requirements per the concept ODP would be, I believe it's 5% for buildings under 15,000 square feet. For buildings 15,000 square feet and higher, it's a 2% requirement of the required parking. So, for example, the Walmart has about 500 spaces if you do the math. That's quite a bit of bike parking. And then more for the smaller tenants.
Okay. Let's see. I know we talked a little bit about on-ramps, off-ramps, and so forth to the existing trail on Cabela Drive where that overpass is going to be. I just wanted to see if there was anything more immediately we could address. Oh, yeah. Mr. Christopher brings up a good point. In terms of RTD access, do we have any information on how RTD may serve this development?
Excuse me. We don't have specific information on routing at this point, but I know RTD has expressed a willingness to talk about new routes that might service this area, but we haven't finalized any specific routes at this point, unless we have a further update. I know there's been some attempt at communication between the applicant and RTD. I'm not sure what the status of that is.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, I don't know if I can provide more current information, but maybe elaborate a little bit on that, and that is that Cabela's has been working with RTD to try to specifically identify how they might serve this property and this project. Certainly it's been designed to accommodate however that ends up, but RTD hasn't agreed on or come up with specifically what routes they want to use or where they want the stops to be located. But particularly at this stage in the design of the development, however that ends up, it can be accommodated, and it's certainly something that's being planned for in the overall design.
Okay, thanks. Mr. Tom Ropke, are you here and would you like to speak? Tom Ropke? Or Repke? Okay, I guess he's heard what he needs to hear or he's not here. Mr. Ron Kiefel? Would you like to come up?
Thank you. I'm Ron Kiefel, 3893 Field Drive, 80033. And I would just like to echo the comments of Scott Christopher that, the multimodal bit of transportation is important, bicycling and pedestrian access. And but first off, I just want to keep my comments short. First off, as a business owner of Wheatridge Cyclery, we're really excited about the Cabela's project coming to town, all the exciting development work that's going on. I've learned a lot this evening, and you can see there's a lot of detail that's been put into this project. And so as a destination business ourselves that, 70% of our sales tax revenue comes from outside the city, we're excited to see that increased traffic and sales tax revenue come to the city in a real positive manner. So thank you for all your efforts and work, and I see a lot of really neat stuff. I do have one question. Is there going to be any on-street bike on Cabela's, any separate lanes or striping along Cabela's Drive? Do you know? Is there any plan for that? As a former professional cyclist and have raced and traveled over 300 miles a year, or 300,000 miles in 20 years of bike racing, that's kind of important to me. So I'm just curious if there's any on-street separation bike lanes along Cabela's.
I can answer that question. There is none. We have no designated bike lanes on Cabela Drive or 40th Avenue. We have the 10-foot trails to accommodate the recreational riders. The other bikers will end up sharing the lanes with the cars and trucks that are on that.
So that's the plan, is that the cyclists will use the actual lanes that the vehicles are in?
Yes.
Okay. Well, I don't know, is the speed limit through there 25, or is that, do you know what has that been designated yet?
It has not been designated.
Okay. Well, I would just like to ask for consideration. I don't know how late that is in the process, if that we can consider future extra width of that roadway, if that's possible to accommodate that. So, but other than that, really appreciate all the effort and work that's gone into this. So thank you.
Thanks for your comments, Mr. Kiefel. Just to follow up on his comments, Mr. Armstrong, a quick question for you. You mentioned in your presentation that on the multi-use, those 10-foot wide multi-use trails along Cabela Drive, that cyclists and pedestrians would only have to cross driveways on that multi-use path. Now, two of those driveways, as they enter into the Lot 5, the Walmart property, those are lighted intersections. Is that correct? They're not just driveways necessarily.
Correct. Those will be signalized intersections.
Signalized intersections. Okay. Yes. So it's more of a street intersection as opposed to a
correct.
What most residential people.
Residential driveway.
Okay.
It's a full intersection and it is signalized.
Okay. I just wanted to clarify that. Thanks. Is there anyone else from the public who would like to speak? Great. Come on up. Give us your name and your address, please.
Thank you. My name is Susan Motika, and I live at 3651 Miller Court in Wheat Ridge. And a few comments and a few questions. I wanted to ask about the minimum number of parking spaces, which I think according to the plan was 520, yet on the Cabela's property, 694 is designated. Similarly, with Walmart, 710 was the floor, 793 would be designated. So why that increase in parking spaces? And I think it points to the need for the kind of shared parking strategy with future developments. I think that that would be something for both citizens and the city to be looking at in the future. A question to THF. I think there would be concern in Wheat Ridge about who the tenants are going to be. We appreciate at this juncture that you're unable to identify those tenants, but we would be very concerned about what kind of tenants. And for example, having a proliferation of fast food restaurants would not be in the health interests of Wheat Ridge. So I think we'd be looking for some kind of community participation process, and eager to hear both Cabela's and THF how we can make good and really give legs to this notion of being good corporate citizens and bonding with our community in a permanent way. On the issue of Wheat Ridge and Wheat Ridge's health and the economic vitality, we clearly have suffered a terrible recession, as many cities and towns have, and we need this tax revenue. We need tax revenue in Wheat Ridge. However, the selection of Walmart and the history of that is something that, not all residents are aware of. And I think that the concern here is the kind of low wages that Walmart has traditionally paid and the lack of health insurance benefits, which of course get turned into health insurance costs in Medicaid and other areas of our budget. So a question, and we're aware these Walmart wages are very well established. Curious about what the average wages are of Cabela's workers to understand how sustainable those wages are here. And I think that's it. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Great. Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Hi.
Hi, my name is Molly Hansen. I'm the Live Well Wheat Ridge coordinator. We're a community coalition working to reduce and prevent obesity in Wheat Ridge.
Excuse me, could you move the mic up a little bit just so we can get you on tape?
Can I try again?
Thank you.
Again, my name is Molly Hansen. I'm the Live Well Wheat Ridge coordinator. We're a community coalition working to reduce and prevent obesity by creating environments that support physical activity. So we really appreciate all the thoughtful comments in the planning process. We really do support this very exciting development. We really, though, want to support the various features that support a multimodal circulation system. So one question that I would like to have clarification on is, You mentioned a multi-use path off-street that I think you said would be 10 feet. So the question we had is would there be a space between the right-of-way and that multi-use path? And could there be an amenity zone to create a more comfortable commuting circulation? And is 10 feet wide enough to support individuals who would be walking, biking, maybe side by side? So that was one question I had.
Okay. Would anyone on staff or the applicant like to address Ms. Hanson's concerns?
With respect to the question about whether there's I think you're asking, is it a detached or an attached sidewalk? There is I believe it's 5 feet detached amenity zone in between the path and the street, and that's proposed to be landscaped and meet the overall standards set forth in the concept ODP. It's 6 feet?
A 6-foot separation that will have some amenities in it, trees and so on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then the second question was, is 10 feet wide enough for multiple users? And I guess I would defer in part to Public Works, but we worked with your staff to try to determine what's the right size for that sidewalk so that it can accommodate both the bicycle and pedestrian users and serve as a functional multi-use trail, and that's how we arrived at the 10 feet.
Mr. Baranza, I believe the Clear Creek Trail is at 8 feet or 10 feet wide?
I believe it's 10.
Okay.
It's a 10 foot is a typical trail width.
All right.
To accommodate both pedestrians and bicyclists.
Okay, so in terms of width at least, the multi-use trail that's proposed within the development will blend in with the Clear Creek Trail in terms of width.
We believe it will, and it also carries up on the street all the way up to 44th, so it'll accommodate those bicyclists and walkers that might be on 44th and want to either come down to the trail or come down into the development or further south.
Okay. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Great. Come on up, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm Barbara Barry, President of the Applewood Valley Association. We're one of the 4 homeowner associations who worked extensively to bring about a very good plan in 2006, 2007. It would be helpful if you appreciate the nature of this Applewood community. Our 7,000 families do not think of city boundaries when we think of our Applewood home. We see houses, schools, parks, and a commercial center. The latter, on Youngfield, is a place where we do contribute to Wheat Ridge tax base and to the success of local businesses. This has been a long-standing relationship. As we see it, I-70 is the big divider, the wall. And there is only one real connector. That's 32nd Avenue through a hole in that I-70 wall. Please understand why we are acutely aware of how things work, and therefore why we pursue the devilish details. I would like to request a correction be recorded for page 7 of the March 17th Planning Commission minutes. My testimony disagreed with some of the staff report conclusions about the ODP, not disagreeing with the ODP itself. 2 critical elements were missing from the ODP that was presented for your vote that night. The missing elements were 1, a current commitment to the required off-site roadway improvements, and 2, an approved traffic analysis showing how the nearly double amount of development floor space would be managed without causing new impact to our community. The first critical element, obviously, is now addressed, and we thank you. It's stated on page 10 in the report, in the staff report, and that would extend to all of the, we assume, to all of the development, all 210 acres, although this staff report is actually only on certain parcels. The second element cannot be resolved until we see an acceptable traffic impact analysis. That final analysis was not due to be available until tomorrow. Meanwhile, we can make this observation with concern. The total traffic entering and leaving the development in the 2030 p.m. peak hour, that's evening rush hour, will increase 36% over the amount that had been predicted in the 2006 traffic analysis and was used as the basis for the EA FONSI and all of the mitigation there. So a 36% increase is significant, and it requires very special attention in order to prevent impacts to our neighborhoods. We expect to continue working with this. We would appreciate a little enhanced communication. We have one other transportation question. Is there in the in the Walmart business plan an auto service center included in this particular development? No. Just garden and in-store operations. Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Great. Thanks for your comments. I think at this time, due to the length of our meeting so far, I'd like to request a 10-minute recess, at which time we can convene and wrap up this case. Okay. Could I get a motion?
So moved.
All right.
Second.
Well, great. Let's vote. All right, we'll be back in 10 minutes.
I've got some language I'll check with Chris.
Okay, if you could please be seated, we're going to reconvene.
Okay, we'll call the meeting back to order. And what we'd like to do is have Ms. White deliver her closing statement, and then the commission will have a chance to ask further questions to the applicant and staff, and then we'll close the meeting and deliberate. So, Ms. White, please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the Commission. On behalf of the applicant, I'd just like to make a few concluding remarks and perhaps respond to some of the issues that were raised during the public comment portion, and maybe hopefully anticipate some of your questions and get them answered for you. One overall comment I'd like to make, and that has to do with the nature of the process. You know, I'm sure it may be a little frustrating for some members of the public or some members of the commission who don't get the opportunity to see this whole process from beginning to end. But the way that your process works with the concept ODP, the specific ODP, and then the FDP, the final development plan, there are some issues that were raised tonight that have already been addressed in the concept ODP. There were some issues raised tonight that typically aren't considered at specific ODP stage but get addressed at the FDP. And so the universe that we're operating in tonight is a little bit constrained when we talk about the bulk, the mass, the general site layout, and the types of things that get considered within the specific ODP. With that said, we certainly want to try to answer all those questions as best we can, whether it has to do with something that you may already have considered or something that's yet to be considered in the FDP. But I just wanted to make that comment to maybe explain why some of our responses are, we deal with that at the FDP stage, or you already dealt with that during the concept ODP. For example, a comment was made about why don't you require Walmart to double its amount of landscaping from 18% to 36%? Well, in the concept ODP that you already recommended approval of, the standards for landscaping are overall in the aggregate average of 20% landscape coverage, and site by site each lot must meet a minimum of 15%. So at 18%, the Walmart site presently meets those standards that you've already recommended, and it wouldn't be appropriate to require something greater than the standard that you've already approved. So that's just one example of a couple of things that fall into that category. Some of the traffic issues are another, but I know that the traffic is such a critical component of this overall development. I would like to beg your indulgence and take a few more minutes to have Chris Foshing, our traffic engineer, try to address the concern that was raised at the end of the public comment about how is it that the traffic improvements as designed can still accommodate all the traffic to be generated by this project, notwithstanding the fact that there is increased traffic compared to the original ODP. So I'll have him come up and do that in just a minute. Briefly then, just to check off on the list some of the other issues that were raised. I appreciate the comments that Mr. Smith raised about the importance of the natural environment here, including the wildlife and the landscaping, and the jewel that really is Clear Creek running along behind the property. I'm not sure that Mr. Smith's vision for what he thinks this could be is all that different from what Cabela's is proposing. And I'll ask Angie Maluski, our landscape architect, to come up and address that in more detail in a few minutes. But the principal difference, I think, between what Mr. Smith described and what we're proposing is not to wall it off and separate that trail, but rather to have there be a blending and have a natural environment between those two. So we'll come back and address that in a little bit more detail. We already talked about noise. There was a question about if the minimum parking requirements are met, why is there more parking than the minimum that's required? you don't have a maximum in your code right now, and we didn't set one in the ODP. And in talking with Walmart and Cabela's, I assure you that the amount of parking they've proposed for each of these respective parcels is absolutely needed at certain of their peak times. Otherwise, they wouldn't propose to devote so much otherwise valuable land space to a use like parking. So although it may seem like excessive parking to some citizens who would like to see less parking, it is absolutely required for these stores to function to their optimal capacity and be the economic engine that I think the city wants them to be. We talked about the multi-use path. Okay, so that's really the main points I wanted to hit. I'd like to ask Angie first to come and address the landscaping briefly, and then Chris Foshing to briefly address the traffic issue, and then that will conclude our concluding remarks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Since I haven't spoken tonight, for the record, I'm Angela Malusi, a landscape architect with BHA Design, 1603 Oak Ridge Drive, Fort Collins, Colorado. Carolyn spoke well, but we just wanted to talk a bit about that connection, the buffer, the edge condition on the north side of Cabela's and adjacent to Clear Creek. That to us is a really important part of this project. And I just want to clarify too that the area along Clear Creek, all the existing vegetation through there, even the secondary drainage that exists there today will stay in place. These plans don't overlock grade that area. They keep it intact and protect it in that natural state with the trail adjacent to it, and it's considered an amenity for the project. And we're hopeful that rather than wall that off, although that's a service area for the Cabela's building for this large destination retail, you can see that Cabela's is keenly aware that that elevation, that north elevation of their building, while it's not their front door, is very visible from I-70. So it's truly four-sided architecture, the building elevation that Noel presented earlier. It's a very handsome elevation, very attractive to the public, attractive from I-70 and also from the Clear Creek Trail area. So we hope to enhance that buffer and any of the water quality features that are there outside those natural areas to make a very natural native transition up to this Cabela's entry rather than a solid screen wall that blocks that off. So that is the intent. We will have a lot more detail for that in the final plan when that's appropriate, but we just wanted to address that as the intent of that transition and buffer.
Great, thank you.
Good evening. For the record, I'm Chris Foshing with Felsberg, Holt, and Olivig. Our office is located at 6300 South Syracuse in Centennial. The question that I'll specifically address has to do with 32nd Avenue and really Youngfield, because it's kind of a little system that's happening there relative to traffic movements. And the increase in traffic is right. That was quoted earlier here at the podium. I mean, clearly there's more density, so there's an increase. I know the traffic improvements have been shown to you over and over and over. I'll get into just a little bit of detail in this specific area to maybe shed some light on this particular area. But as it relates to 32nd Avenue passing under I-70, there's going to be an increase in capacity in both directions. The westbound, if you can think of the westbound direction, traveling from Youngfield heading towards Golden. Today there's 3 lanes. One's a dedicated left turn lane to turn to the on-ramp, and then there's 2 through lanes. Well, that dedicated left turn lane is going to get converted into a through lane. Reason being, and I don't need the graphic, Carolyn, but that dedicated, today is a dedicated left turn lane gets converted to a through lane because the ramps get relocated up onto Cabela Drive. So we get rid of the left turn lane, we get rid of that traffic signal as well, so the westbound direction's improved. Eastbound direction, we're actually adding a lane. We're going to be adding a lane against the abutment. The sidewalk will get put up on the other side of the column. So we're adding capacity under 32nd Avenue. At the intersection of Youngfield, because the functionality of Youngfield and 32nd really governs how things work in this area, we're adding a lot of turn lanes. Every approach will have double left turns. Every approach will have separate rights. When you look at our calculations, we're adding more than 40% of a capacity increase to that intersection with the improvements that are planned. When you look at the trips that would be generated, total trips of the new development plan, it's about a 20 to 25% increase in traffic. So we're putting more capacity into that intersection than we're putting demand. Now it's important to note when I say that you have to understand the context of all the improvements, because all the improvements provide other means of getting into and out of the site. There's going to be 4 ways of getting in and out of the site. There's a new interchange onto Highway 58, Cabela Drive, coming down. There's hook ramps, okay? We talk about the ramps being relocated off of 32nd. Westbound I-70 will literally have a way right into the site. There's the new underpass from Youngfield at 40th that was completed a few years ago, and then there'll be Cabela Drive from 32nd. So this is really only one of 4 ways. If we didn't have these other 3 ways, I think we'd have a very different story to tell as to what the functionality would be at this intersection. And then one last point I want to make about the Youngfield 32nd Avenue intersection. When we ran our calculations in the last iteration, the last development plan that I think was approved back in 07, our calculations were showing that there was reserve capacity in the set of improvements that we had. In other words, we weren't pushing it to its limit, not even close. All right? So it could handle a bit of an increase, and we're eating into that reserve, but we are still showing that operation will be within acceptable levels. So hopefully that answers the question on 32nd Avenue. Okay?
Great. Thank you.
That concludes our presentation. Thank you for the opportunity, and we look forward to answering your questions.
Great. Thank you. Questions from the commission? All right. George?
This is either for Noel or Angela regarding the landscape design or intentions along the north facade between the Greenbelt and the areas. I think you know there's language here to talk about extensive landscaping in that area, and I would like to know if your interpretation of that, maybe if you could just expand a little bit on what you were talking about, not only in terms of maintaining the natural aspects of the area, but probably more importantly, enhancing the connection between the Greenbelt and the Clear Creek crossing, and if there's some ideas that you guys have already thought of that you would expect to bring forward.
Sorry, I was just going to see if I get one drawing up this kind of illustrating that area, but so just I think to answer your question, you're asking a little bit about the landscape treatment north of Cabela's and the connection to Clear Creek and the existing trail. So just to talk again about the existing trail that's here today and the Cabela's site. So a few things that are happening there. The Clear Creek Trail remains in place. There's the drainage piece that remains in place. You noted earlier the water quality pond, the smaller water quality pond in that general area that's proposed for that area. And Meredith mentioned it well early on that the intent there is that as we look at those spaces where the water quality ponds are between the Clear Creek and the developed areas, that we'll work with staff to talk about species, the layout, the wildlife conditions, to really develop a plan that's appropriate for that buffer area, and to really create a natural setting and a transition from that natural setting to the developed area. And I think the second piece, too, to remember as well, that again has been really crucial for the Cabela's layout, is we're really taking a direct extension of the existing trail right up along the east side of Cabela's lot and property. So there's a direct connection for the pedestrians from that trail to West 40th Avenue. So that's happening here. This is a real public front to Cabela's along I-70. Their boat displays are there. But having that trail connection come right along the front of the store and connect to the front of the store and then on to 40th Avenue has been a key piece. And again, we talked about that. It's a 10-foot wide multi-purpose trail, so it's really bringing that very directly, that multi-use recreational aspect that happens right now along Clear Creek right into the development. And then further, to go back to our display here, here's that connection we just talked about. We carry that 10-foot wide trail right along 40th and along Cabela Drive, so we make this full connection right into the development off the trail. So it's been a key piece of the development and the layout so far. I'm not sure if that answers all the questions that you had, but those are the concepts behind what's being proposed.
Yeah, I think it answers some of my questions. And one of the concerns, I guess, about the water quality pond is the nature of the device. It's obviously not something that you can engage and manipulate very, extensively because it is a stormwater device. So what I'm interpreting then is that your connection is kind of to the east and around of that water quality pond as you make a connection from the Creek Crossing area down into the greenbelt.
The trail connection is east of that proposed water quality feature, and I would say that we actually have had good success with landscape treatment of water quality features. So again, the final details, the final grade, and the final planting will happen at that final plan stage, but the intent, and I think what we've seen happen in the past, is those can be actually quite a natural amenity as well as serving that water quality purpose. So the function has to be there, the safety aspects of the storm drainage need to come first, but we've had a lot of good success, especially when we're talking about native plant establishment, in making those very much a part of the natural feature as well.
Any questions? Okay. Sort of as a follow-up to that for staff, I noticed that the multi-use path that heads along the east side of the Cabela's lot 1.1, kind of bumps out of the lot, and so there's going to be a little bit of space to the west of that multi-use path that's east of the lot line. Is there some plan in place to harmonize whatever plans the applicant's going to have for landscaping and open space treatment on their side of the lot with whoever owns? Is that Jeffco land or is that city land?
The property you're referring to is state highway right-of-way.
Okay.
And there will need to be a permit obtained from CDOT to make that construction. Part of that permit could include some landscaping. So that's, again, something that would be addressed in the final design.
Okay. So that actual sort of permit process and sort of symbiosis between the state land and the applicant's lot, that would be addressed at the FDP stage?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. No one else has any questions? All right. So you're all going to have to sit in silence while I look at my 5 pages of notes that I generated at tonight's meeting. Okay, I think that does it for questions. If there are no more questions for staff or the applicant, I'd like to close the public portion of this case and move on to discussion amongst us commissioners. Do you have any comments? Okay. Oh, okay. This is just when we talk about how we feel about the program. concerns with that. So, yeah, all right. I wonder if when we're all quiet on TV, if they play like some kind of music, just to fill the, I don't know. I'll have to tape it and watch it.
I move to recommend approval of case number WZ-11-2, a request for approval of plan commercial development, PCD, specific ODP on lots 1.1, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 2.4, 3, 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3 within the Clear Creek Crossing Concept Outline Development Plan for the following reasons. 1, all requirements for a PCD specific outline development plan have been met. And 2, the proposed specific ODP is consistent with the development regulations established in the Clear Creek Crossing Concept Outline Development Plan and Design Standards Pattern Book.
Second that. So what you?
Yeah. Okay, we have a second discussion. The proposed conditions. Let's discuss those.
I think that I actually agree with most of the conditions. I am inclined to strengthen number 1. I do have thoughts on 7 and 8 too. I can go through them. Or
yeah, why don't you talk about them?
You want me to make an amendment to the motion?
Well, we can discuss what your concerns are and then make the motion once we've all talked.
Yeah, I mean, I would like I'd like the first condition on the extensive landscaping just to be a little bit more descriptive of activating the space between the two areas. So.
I see Jerry's madly trying to talk to us.
That works. As you've got a motion pending, and so the only way really to change that motion is to take amendments to the motion to amend condition number 2 to read as follows, kind of thing. Vote those amendatory motions up and down, and then you'll have a fully amended motion once you've worked your way through whatever amendments to the conditions. But if I were Commissioner Pond, I'd make a motion to amend the motion by changing condition number 1 to read as follows, and then you can have a discussion on that amendment and talk about it a lot, and then that's the way to kind of proceed through amending the motion.
And then go to 2.
Then go to 2 and take them up one at a time.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, then I make a motion to amend the motion with the condition on the Cabela site, sheet 3, extensive landscaping be designed and installed along the rear of the building with a focus on screening views and activating the space between the rear of the building and the green belt for users of the Clear Creek Trail and Clear Creek Crossing.
I second that.
Discussion on the amendment. Okay. Let's call for a vote.
passes 5-0.
Okay. How about condition 2, the proposed condition 2? The access drive design from Cabela Drive show lane striping and dimensions to ensure proper functionality. Someone want to just make a motion for that? Sorry, I have to apologize as the new chair. It's been a while since I've chaired a meeting. I realize now we should have probably read all these conditions in, so it's going to take a little extra time to read all of these in separately, so just bear with me. Okay. Great.
I make a motion to amend with the following conditions. Condition number 2, the access drive from Cabela Drive show lane striping and dimensions to ensure proper functionality. Condition 3, the western entrance from Cabela Drive be properly designed to provide an attractive entrance. Condition 4, the bike parking areas be shown on sheets 3 and 5. Condition 5, on sheet 5, screening must occur on the south side of the building, including installation of fencing and landscaping consistent with pattern book. Condition 6, on sheets 5 and 6, public road be designated Clear Creek Drive.
Second the motion.
Okay, discussion? Okay, vote.
And that motion passes 5-0.
Okay, condition 7, proposed condition 7, I should say. What are the conditions? What are the concerns, George? Let's hear it.
I make a motion to amend with the following condition number 7. Regarding the northeast corner of Lot 2.2, the applicant commits to a buffer area greater in scope than indicated in the SDP to be finalized in the FDP.
Second the motion.
Discussion? Call for a vote, please.
And that motion passes 5-0.
All right. Proposed condition, the remaining conditions, I'll entertain motions. Go ahead, George. That's all right. You can do all of them.
I make a motion to amend with the following condition number 8. On sheet 9, the use of painted concrete on facades be changed to textured paint on concrete.
Second the motion.
Any discussion? Mr. Matthews?
I'll be voting against this because, frankly, I don't think painted concrete is in compliance with the design standards pattern book.
Any more discussion? I can see personally, I myself can see the pros and cons in it. I understand the architect's argument and the developer's argument for a more permanent structure. Having owned stucco-surrounded homes, I understand the challenges of matching color. So I'll be voting in favor of that motion, I believe. All right, let's call for a vote.
The motion passes with Commissioner Matthews voting opposed.
All right, we're down to 2. Go ahead.
I make a motion to amend with the following conditions. Number 9, on the elevation designs on sheets 7, 8, 9, and 10, an analysis be incorporated demonstrating compliance with requirements for building articulation, unifying elements used, transparency, and breakdown of architectural materials. Any deviation from these requirements must be justified. And 10, on sheets 5 through 10, the document title be revised to designate approval of Lot 1.1, not Lot 1.
Second the motion.
All right, discussion. All right, I'll call for a vote.
And that motion passes 5-0.
Okay. So now we've approved all those amendments. Jerry, now it's my understanding we need to call a vote for the approval
That's
of
right.
the entire amended motion.
That's right. You've now got a fully amended motion, and
All right.
that motion's still pending because Commissioner Matthews made that motion, and now it's been amended, so now you just vote on the amended motion.
All right. So we have an amended motion before us. I'll call for a vote if there's no more discussion. All right.
And the motion passes 5-0.
Okay. Before we move on to the next case, I'd like to thank everyone in the public who came to speak and to observe. I really appreciate you being here and telling us what you think. And I appreciate the applicant and staff's time on this particular case. Moving now on to case number WZ11-02. No, hold on. Did we just do that? Did we just? Yeah, sorry, we just did that one. We're going to move on to case number WS-11-01, an application filed by Cabela's Retail, Inc., Coors Brewing Company in Jefferson County for a major subdivision plat on property zoned planned commercial development, PCD, and located at 4000 Cabela Drive and 4105 Youngfield Service Road. Staff presentation.
I lost my prediction that we were going to be out of here by 10, so.
Sorry,
That's
my bad.
That's all right. Anyway, again, for the record, Meredith Reckert, Wheat Ridge Community Development Department. My presentation for this application will be fairly short because I believe that the applicant has a fairly lengthy one. So to get started, case number WS-11-01 is a request for approval of a 10-lot re-subdivision for a 15-lot plat. 4000 Cabela Drive, 5105 Youngfield Service Road. I'd like to enter into the record the subdivision regulations, zoning ordinance, case file, and packet materials, contents of this digital presentation. The property is located within the city of Wheat Ridge, and all posting and notification requirements have been met. Therefore, Commission does have jurisdiction to hear this case. Again, we're looking at the same slide showing the outline of the ODP property. This is also consistent with what the boundary of the subdivision is, comprised of 210 acres of land, access points from existing rights-of-way, including the Southern Service Road for Highway 58 with West 40th Avenue from Youngfield via the I-70 underpass. Youngfield Service Road extended from 32nd Avenue. When we went through the original approvals back in 2005, 2006, there was one plat document approved with a couple minor amendments, and it is that primary plat document that we are amending. Essentially, in a nutshell, the modifications on the proposed document accommodates the new development scenario, of course. There's a slight realignment of Cabela Drive, incorporation of the TMAC parcel into the overall development property, realignment of 40th Avenue as it intersects Cabela and Cabela Drive. And one thing I forgot was the dedication of the Clear Creek Drive in the interior of the site. The document is 8 pages long, and like I say, instead of going page by page, kind of like what I did with the specific ODP, I'm just going to note that the first 4 sheets of the document actually are a series of vacations for those publicly dedicated rights-of-way And then the second 4 sheets are actually new dedications for the realignment and the new street modification. Not showing slides. We've seen those a couple times before. I would note that this case was set out on the typical referral period that we always do, and folks responded back that they can serve with upgrades. West Metro Fire indicated that, as did North Table Mountain Water and Sanitation. Xcel Energy has some slightly modified easement language they're suggesting that I've talked with the applicant about. And finally, Wheat Ridge Public Works has reviewed and approved a master drainage report, and those easements that are reflected on the plat are consistent with that report. They did have some comments regarding some of the technical elements of the way the legal description was written. That was included as one of the exhibits to the staff report. So, in conclusion, we are recommending approval for the following reasons. The proposed plat meets the requirements of Article 4 of the Zoning and Development Code. The proposed subdivision will accommodate the new development scenario. We have a couple conditions included, and they are, actually I had 4 included in the staff report. I've removed 1, which I believe was number 3 of the suggested motion, essentially because the location of that lot line needs to remain in place to accommodate the sale of the TMAC parcel. Other than that, that concludes my comments. And I do have the entire plat loaded in the PowerPoint, but I wasn't planning on going through it. So,
if we have specific things we want to look at, it's good to know it's there.
Yes.
Okay. Great.
Okay.
Thank you, Meredith.
You bet.
Can we hear from...
Just one question on the process. A major subdivision goes to City Council where a minor subdivision is approved by the Planning Commission?
Generally, that's true unless there are right-of-way dedications or vacations, and those have to be acted upon by City Council. So tonight, this is considered a major subdivision, and you're also vacating and dedicating, so you'll be a recommending body to City Council's final approval.
Okay, do we have a presentation from the applicant?
Thank you. I didn't know how to do that piece. For the record, my name is Lori Baker, B-A-K-E-R. I'm at 410 17th Street, Denver. I am Land Use Counsel for Cabela's, and I am here along with John Moore of Martin & Martin to present rather quickly the subdivision plat for the Clear Creek Crossing development. I think it was said earlier by the chairman that we had a lot to say, and I assure you we don't have as much to say right now, so we'll move along rather quickly. Let's see. As Meredith said, right now we are asking for your recommendation of approval of the Clear Creek Crossing subdivision plat. From here it'll go on to council, and we'll talk about it more then. What we're doing tonight is essentially amending the previously approved subdivision plat for the Cabela's Coors subdivision plat that was approved back in 2006. And that plat accommodated the prior development vision for the property, and so it needs to be amended to accommodate the new development vision, which we've talked a lot about a couple weeks ago during the concept ODP presentation, and again tonight with a specific ODP presentation. Basically what we're doing is we're changing the plat to reflect the incorporation of 33 additional acres, the acres that are being annexed into the city from Jefferson County. We are reconfiguring the property so that there will now be 15 lots and 4 tracks. And then there's a couple key changes to the roadways. There's going to be a slight realignment of West 40th Avenue slight realignment of Cabela's Drive, and the addition of one more public road, Clear Creek Drive. And you've seen those previously, but we're going to show you more illustrations on the plat itself. One of the reasons we're doing this, I should also mention, is because there has been this updated traffic analysis, and by realigning the roads, we're bringing the design more into line with what that analysis says. So without further ado, I'll talk to you again in a couple of minutes. I'll introduce John Moore from Martin & Martin to walk through the details of the plat.
Thank you, Lori. There we go. My apologies. Staff, Tim, Meredith, and all the public that have endured this evening, thank you for sticking around. My name is John Moore, M-O-O-R-E, 13950 West 32nd Avenue, Golden, Colorado, 80401. So tonight, what we have here in our first slide, and there aren't many, this will go quick, this is a simplistic overview of the final product that we're heading towards, the final plat, our goal. We have here 15 lots and 4 tracks, and along with the existing Clear Creek Trail, with the easements that were adopted by the City Council in the last couple of weeks, this is the correct location of the exact trail as well as the easement that contains it. The color slides that we're going to go through, and again, there aren't that many, are going to demonstrate how we got from the 2006 plat to where we are today, to the document that's in front of you. The first sheets 2 through 5, as Meredith explained, are for the vacation. Sheets 6 through 9 are the dedications. We'll talk about those briefly. And then one other thing that we're adding into this, of course, is the 33 acres of the Jefferson County property to bring the total acreage of this plat to around 210 plus or minus acres. Okay, the first color plat, we're going to deal with vacation, specifically right away. Originally, our intent in the beginning of the project was to realign a portion of Cabela's Drive through this region here and essentially the entire stretch of West 40th Avenue. But as the project progressed, other criteria became evident that we needed to address, one of which, of course, was to bring the road systems and the right-of-way in compliance and in alignment with the revised Felsberg-Holt report. In that report, there are addition of several dedicated right turn only lanes, along with the respective tapers that go along with that. And those lanes were, in essence, from the very south to the very north part of Cabela's in significant reaches. So that changed a lot of the right-of-way widths that were going to be needed for Cabela's. Additionally, Tim and I realized not long ago that the right-of-way documents that had been requested by CDOT in the city in the region for the hook ramps had not been finalized and recorded, and there'd be an easy way to clean that up at this time as well to get the proper right-of-way widths for the hook ramps as they come off I-70. Lastly, with the Jefferson County purchase parcel, that's this pork chop shaped land up here. With the pending sale of that to Cabela's, there wouldn't be a need for a platted public right-of-way to access this flag lot any longer. Hence, we're going to vacate Youngfield Service Road right-of-way as well. So, staff and us and our team went back and forth quite a bit on how to handle this, and it became evident that the easiest way to do this was let's just vacate all of the right-of-ways and then rededicate them in the proper size, the proper width, the proper location, and that's the avenue that we went. The purplish area up here, like I said, represents the Jefferson County piece that is under contract with Cabela's. This, just for reference, was the old T-Max site, which, of course, has been demoed at this time. Okay, on this slide, the only thing we've added are the 3 existing platted drainage easements. They're represented here, and they're also on the 2006 plat. These are being combined and relocated, most of which into the regional water quality facility, which will be located in this area right in here. This little drainage easement that came up earlier in his questions behind the Cabela site may or may not be needed depending on how the final drainage plan works out in the FDP stage and the final grading plans and all of that. We're thinking that it may be necessary, but it's conceivable based on grading and other issues that water also will be sent in this direction as well. Okay. This takes us to the beginning of the dedications. This would be represented on sheets 6 through 9, and also some lot configurations as we move forward. This shows the Cabela's Drive realignment. As you can tell, to the untrained eye, it doesn't look like the alignment of the roadway is much different, and it isn't. It really only changed here, but the big differences, of course, were the change in the right-of-way widths. The area north of north of Clear Creek was increased from 70 feet up to 97. Part of that was due to the getting back in line with the FHU most recent report, but also some of that was due to adopting and respecting the new city streetscape standards, which increased the sidewalk widths as well as the landscape buffer widths between the detached walks and the back of the curb next to the road. So that's represented on the north side. On the south side, a large portion of the roadway is now at 112-foot right-of-way versus the old 100. This gives the opportunity for the extra laneage necessary for the turn lanes. Here's 40th Avenue. It's been realigned, and of course, its right-of-way width is also increased. The new Clear Creek Drive here, and unfortunately on the plat, I had it still labeled for the parcels that you guys have, for the packages you guys have, as Village Drive. That's incorrect. It's Clear Creek Drive. And here's the correct and respected wider right-of-way widths for the I-70 hook ramps in its correct configuration. Another function of the plat that Meredith mentioned a minute ago was to create conveyance lots to go to both Longs Peak Metro District and Cabela's. This is the Jefferson County property that's being further subdivided into 2 lots, or 1 lot and 4 tracts. The 4 tracts will be sold off to the Longs Peak Metro District, and the remaining portion will be part of Cabela's. At such time when the plat's approved and the sale has taken place and conveyed, this lot line can be vacated and it can be consolidated into 1 lot for Cabela's. Please note that nothing has changed with the existing Clear Creek Trail, its location or the easement that it's contained in. That's been respected throughout the process. Here we are dedicating a little small drainage tract D, and this here is intended to be part of the overall regional water quality facility. That water quality facility was designed some time ago and hasn't changed, and its location would require a small portion of this area here, and so that entire tract D has been designated as a storm drainage easement. Okay, as we wind this up, we're bringing in what's remaining is the Coors property. You might recall this is where the existing detention pond, storage pond is for Coors right now. The remainder of their lots, they're slightly different in size because as the roadway right-of-way got wider, their lot lines got a little smaller, and the respective utility easements had to be vacated and rededicated to respect the new right-of-way width. So slightly smaller lot areas, but again, to the untrained eye, it looks like the same configuration that was platted in 2006. And then we just bring in to show what you approved earlier tonight, the sites where the Cabela lot is here, and they own everything in green still. The Walmart, of course, is in gray down in this area. And the THF parcels that you guys have approved are represented in orange. And the last slide just shows that is the lot and plat, the lot and block numbers that we have presented in front of you on the final plat, pages 6 through 9, that show the dedications and the reconfiguration of the lots, show the 4 tracks and the 15 lots along with the new right-of-way. And that's the end. I bring back Lori.
I almost said this is the end, but I can't sing. Thank you, John. Just to close things out, we just want to say that we agree to the 3 conditions that Meredith put up on the screen earlier. We've already started talking with them about it, and we will make sure that those are all complied with. We also agree with the city staff's conclusion that the plat complies with all requirements of the city subdivision regulations, and it also complies with the concept ODP and the specific ODP that the commission has already approved. So with that, we request your approval, and we're standing by for questions.
Great. Thanks for your presentation. Is there anybody from the audience who would like to speak on this matter?
Roxanne Runkle was originally signed up on this. I believe she has left, if I'm not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the only name on the sub.
Okay. Okay. Great. Questions for staff or the applicant? Scott.
Yeah, I have a question. Meredith, could you put that conditions back up on the screen for me, please? And are those, can you confirm that those are the most current? Because those look different than what I have.
Yes, sometimes I paraphrase. Bring it back up. One of the things I'd also like to point out is in the recommended motion, just a housekeeping measure, is this is it's a 10-lot re-subdivision, but it's a 15-lot subdivision, if that makes sense to you. The 10-lot re-subdivision was for the original approval. This now has 15 lots. So there is staff's recommendation. Essentially what I did was I took out number 3 of the recommended motion and then just renumbered.
The language in the staff report would be the language we'd be requesting, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
that's correct.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, I think we're ready to close the public portion of the hearing on this case and entertain motions.
I move to recommend approval of case number WS-11-01, a request for approval of a 10-lot subdivision plat on property located at 4000 Cabela Drive and 4105 Youngfield Service Road for the following reasons. All requirements of Article 4 of the Zoning and Development Code have been met. Number 2, it will accommodate the new development scenario for the property with the following conditions. Number 1, a note identifying the use of tracks B, C, and D must be added. Number 2, the easement note on sheet 1 be modified to indicate the 10-foot easements must be dedicated around the perimeter of lots, tracks, parcels, and/or open space areas. And 3, public works comments be addressed prior to the City Council public hearing.
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, I'll call for a vote then. Great, thanks. Okay, the next case. For everyone who's leaving, thank you very much. We'll see you all at the FDP later. Next case number ZOA-11-03, an ordinance amending Chapter 26 concerning non-conforming structures in the floodway district. And Meredith, staff report.
And I'm deferring to Mr. Paranto.
Mr. Paranto, okay, welcome.
Good evening. Getting late. What you have before you this evening is a recommendation to make what we believe is a significant change, though it's not technically hard to understand, we don't believe, to our ordinance concerning floodplains. We have currently the ordinance prohibits the use of buildings within the floodway, the critical portion of the stream. The problem we have with that particular part of this ordinance is that if we were to have any of the buildings that are currently in that floodway zone be destroyed or require significant reconstruction. The current ordinance does not allow them to be reconstructed or repaired, and so it would render the properties useless and could become inverse taking by the city if we didn't allow some use. These properties that we're talking about are properties that were in existence prior to this ordinance having been created. So the city attorney has crafted some language, and there's been some recrafting that he'll talk about in a little bit. But what I wanted to give you a quick shot of on your screens is simply a matter of showing you where these locations are, because I assumed you might want to just see what kind of impact we have. The number of homes and buildings that are now in the floodway has increased since the recent 2007 floodplain study, and some of you are familiar with that, some may not be, but there's a new study that was prepared, and it actually widened that zone, and this area is probably the greatest area of homes affected. It's the area between Clear Creek and I-70 from Carr to Estes, that general area. And on your maps, you'll see the houses a little bit better. But if any of those houses become damaged for any reason, fire or flood, we would not be able to issue a building permit to allow repair or reconstruction. Another area where we have homes like that is the area just to the east of Kipling. And you can see there's quite a few houses in that area that are also affected. And then let's jump all the way down to the very southwest part of the city where Lena Gulch comes into the city. There aren't as many there, but we do have some homes that crowd up against Lena Gulch, and if any of the houses in the floodway, then all of the houses in the floodway basically. So you can see there's some houses there. And then just north of 32nd along Lena Gulch, where the stream bed starts to flatten out and the floodplain gets wider, we have another area where we have probably 15 or so homes that are in the floodway, and we're recommending that you recommend the change before you, which again the city attorney will discuss, to allow these folks to maintain the value of their property and reconstruct if that catastrophic event occurs. Be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, am I on? Shall I do it from here? Let me do it.
Sure.
First, members of the commission, do you have a revision of this ordinance? You should. Came to you under a cover email from me to Kathy Field. If you have that, that's the version we ought to be looking at. And pardon me, I can tell you the reason for that change. As you know, this is an amendment to Chapter 26, and we had neglected to remember that, of course, those come to the Planning Commission. And occasionally, and this happens, we will do first reading at council, then Planning Commission review and recommendation, second reading. That's happens once or twice a year, probably, here at the city. And your recommendation is important, and that's why we've deferred, of course, second reading council until we could bring it to you. But meanwhile, council did see it on first reading. Councilmember Berry had some concerns about the original ordinance being confusing in the fact that it had a lot of cross-references, which was true. And Mr. Pronto and I met with Councilmember Berry the first of this week and went through the ordinance and were able to considerably shorten it and still accomplish what we wanted to do. So let me tell you, if you've got that ordinance, kind of how it reads, and then Tim and I can both answer any questions you might have. As Tim has said, the present state of our floodway code does not permit structures for human habitation in the floodway. Of course, there are plenty of them. You've seen them on the map. They are, of course, legal non-conforming uses. We're not going to go out and tell people they have to move out today. But there's no provision in the code presently for what happens when those structures are damaged or desired to be substantially improved. Under the present code, we would have to say, no, it's been damaged. You're done having a structure in the floodway. And we looked at whether we should just have that as the rule and did a fair amount of case law research. Came to the conclusion that we could probably try to argue that the people are aware of that, and we've got a health, safety, welfare reason to say no houses there. But we looked at the actual facts. This is the community. The community's been there a long time. And we felt pretty strongly that we didn't want to be in the position of doing an inverse condemnation taking, because you're allowed to restrict uses in the floodplain so long as there's some kind of economic use left. Well, here, really the only economic use of these little lots is for residences. That's what they've been devoted for. You can't tell somebody in the middle of the block, because your house burned down, you're now in the public park business. And that's a good economic use for it, and you can charge, money for people to come. It's not available. And so we came to the conclusion it was going to be all right to change the ordinance to allow those homes to remain after being destroyed or damaged, and to allow those homes to be substantially improved without triggering what then was a total prohibition. So we created a new category that tracks other categories in the floodplain ordinance. If you turn to the ordinance now, you'll see what we've done. In the floodway district, there are presently two categories: permitted uses and prohibited uses. Permitted uses are, I think, in letter B. Prohibited uses are in D. And you'll see what we've done. We've created a new category of use within the floodway district that's designed to just capture these particular homes. So we're saying the following uses are permitted in the floodway district as special exceptions. It's just sort of they're clearly not prohibited. We don't want to say permitted so that we get additional homes. And we necked it down. We confined it pretty stringently to structures for human occupancy in existence as of February 26, 2001, which is the date that this floodplain ordinance was originally enacted, subject to some requirements. So, and we'll get into those in a minute, but the intention was to say, all right, we're going to allow these uses to be permitted uses in kind of their own category in the floodway district, but subject to some requirements which frankly are going to be a little more stringent than requirements on houses that aren't in the floodway, because they are in the floodway. And if they're going to be reconstructed, there will be some requirements. So if you turn the page, we'll get to those requirements. You'll notice at the top, a special exception permit's not required. It's important to us to tell people, no, you don't have to get special permits. You are allowed. If you're going to do reconstruction after damage, then you're non-conforming, but you have to comply with the rules in 26807. So rather than 3 pages of ordinance, we've only got 2. And you'll notice that we're saying the use can't be expanded or enlarged. You can't expand or enlarge the nonconformity. That's pretty classic. We decided that we should extend the period during which you can rebuild from 1 year to 2, because we felt that the use being discontinued for 1 year was pretty short, especially in the event of damage. You're arguing with the insurance company, you're getting the money, and we felt more time was necessary. And lastly, you'll notice that they've got to any alteration, addition, or repair to nonconforming structure has to be protected by flood-proofing measures, which Tim can describe if you've got specific questions about that. In addition to that, you'll notice if you flip back to the first page, those structures are also subject, besides being subject to nonconforming use 807, also subject to 26806 D, E, and F, which are specific requirements with respect to construction in the floodway. So, for example, if the house is going to be rebuilt, it can be rebuilt on the same footprint, but will need to be raised above, 1 foot above the flood level. Similarly, if there's to be an enlargement, that will have to be raised above. And yes, that's a more stringent requirement than if you had a home that wasn't anywhere near a floodplain. but we feel that we've kind of appropriately compromised between saying it's floodway, if you're burned down, you're done, on the one hand, and saying it's floodway, but go ahead and rebuild in the same location, which is below the one, more than a foot below the flood level. Go ahead and expand, and thereby expand the amount of obstructions in the floodway. No, if there's going to be repair or replacement, you're going to have to comply with the requirements, but you're going to be able to retain a residential use there. And so I thought, made an appropriate compromise between those two positions. Be happy to answer questions. You probably might want to run some fact patterns that Tim can tell you if a homeowner asks to do this, what does that mean on the ground for them if they want to enlarge? What's it going to look like before them to get a building permit under this set of rules? What can we tell you?
I have one question. When I look at Section 2 of this 26807, and I'm looking at B and E and trying to interpret something, is it reasonable to say that if a substantial improvement is proposed, that the structure in its entirety would have to comply with flood-proofing measures? Because if you look at E, it says any alteration, addition, or repair. I think the intent is like, part of the building is damaged, then it'd have to be flood-proof. But the way that B kind of reads, it says no substantial improvement to any structure unless the entire structure is brought up, conforms to it. So I kind of look at that, interpret, and say like, so if I have part of my damaged house, even though I might want to flood-proof, say, a portion of that, well, now the entire structure, is that the intent?
Tim, you want to?
Yes, it is. What we want to do is, if someone's going to make a major investment into a property that's in the floodplain, then we want them to, we're going to protect them from themselves. We want that property, that new investment, to be protected from future floods. And they can do it in one of two ways. They can raise the whole structure up, or they can raise and floodproof. So if the property's damaged enough where they've got to go in and it's more than 50%, see, that's the definition of substantially improved. So if over half the value of the house is gone, they're going to need to spend a lot of money to rebuild it. So let's rebuild it correctly, and then we'll make them flood-proof or raise or both. And so a combination of those ways to take care of it. And it would all be handled through a building permit rather than making them, go through the more rigorous process.
Okay, thank you.
Maybe this is obvious, I'm not sure, but the concept of a conforming or non-conforming structure is different than the concept of a non-conforming use. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So when in B of this section that we were just discussing, we're talking about bringing something up to a conforming structure that's dealt with somewhere else in the code, I guess, in terms of what that means, not obviously bringing it to a conforming use.
That's right. When you're here, we've got what we've effectively done is created a category of uses. And your question is very similar to the question Councilmember Berry really had. She said, how can it be a non-conforming use but also be permitted? Because the earlier draft of the ordinance, you'll notice, said, well, you're permitted, but you're really not. So we created this category of special exception uses in the floodplain for homes for residential homes that were already in place. Pretty narrow category. You can't really add uses to that. And we said those, by whatever name, those structures have to comply with 26807. 26807 is, is titled a non-conforming use section, but it's got requirements. And there was no great way to create a new category of permitted uses and say you're also subject to some non-conforming rules. And I recognize that brings with a little bit of confusion. Hopefully, when we've said in the special exception new use, here's the things you got to worry about. You got to worry about the stuff in 26807, and we could have called 26807 other requirements in the floodplain if we'd wanted to. But they're requirements you got to meet. So it's a terminology battle we'll probably have to always, fight. I can't think of a better way to do it. I think we've at least made it better than the original draft, I'll tell you that.
Can I add one more thing? And that is that what we're doing here is only addressing the occupiable houses or human houses. So there are other uses that are out in the floodway. Let's say we've got a landscape company that is selling mulch, and so there's some damage to that, and they lose their business, and they come in to reapply. We tell them that they can have that business that they had, but they can't have material. They can't sell material that's going to float away. We don't allow fences in the floodway, so if we have a fence that's destroyed, we wouldn't let them rebuild the fence. So there's some things like that we are leaving the way it is today. They can still use the property, again, for their home or their office, if it's an office, and we have several of those in the floodway as well.
So just to clarify then, going back to B and E on this, if you're saying all of the alterations in E need to be protected by floodproofing pursuant to the section that's called out there, is that the same section that calls out what a conforming structure is?
Let me see if I'm following your question. Can you ask that question again? I'm sorry.
Well, let me ask it in a different way.
Okay. Yep.
I come to you and say that I'm going to do I want to do a substantial improvement to my property, and I am in this.
In your house?
Yes.
Okay.
And I'm in this group,
Okay.
and you're pointing me to in B here that I have to, whatever I do needs to then make my structure conforming, and where do I find the information that tells me what I have to do?
Well, you would find it in E to begin with, and E takes you to 26808C4A, and you would also find it in on the first page, sections 26806D, E, and F. Those are the two places you would look to see what applied to you. And 806D, E, and F, Tim can describe those better than I can, but they're a set of, construction-related requirements. Those are the two places we would send you. Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, we got it in email, yeah.
It's all right. We're good.
It's all right. Thanks for double checking, though. Does anyone else have questions for staff? No? Okay. Anyone in the public want to? No, we already did that. Okay. I'll close the public portion of the hearing and entertain motions or discussion.
I move to recommend approval of the proposed ordinance amending Article 8 of Chapter 26 of the Wheat Ridge Code of Laws concerning nonconforming structures in the floodway district.
Second that.
Any discussion? All right, I'll call for a vote.
The motion passes 5-0.
Great.
Thank you,
Thank you very
staff. Other items. I actually had one quick other item before we look at anything else. I was remiss in not formally welcoming District 4 Commissioner Tracy Gildner. Hello. Say hi to everybody. All right. Do we want to talk about the 38th Avenue quarter plan update today? Or do you want to table that until next meeting, since it's almost 11?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All right. Vote, please.
And it's unanimous.
Great. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.